Hello guys, this is Dark Fox Sage 2 and we are back with our new fanfic, which is what if Naruto was in a hit list of Anbu and fell in love with 1010 part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and please subscribe to the channel. It motivates me to upload more fanfic like these for you all. Now let's start the fanfiction. Sakura squeezed the water out of the rag she held and laid it on Sasuke's forehead. He and Naruto were still out cold, and Sasuke was running a colossal fever. On his neck where Orochimaru had bitten him were a trio of comma-shaped marks. The gale that Orochimaru had created to scatter them had blown away her pack, and she had only a kunai for arms. She swiftly searched her comrades' packs and found little, a handful of shuriken and some wire from Sasuke's gear, and Naruto's supply scroll. She pulled Naruto's tomahawks and bowie knife over to her, and slid them into her belt before setting up what little traps she could and settling into wait. Naruto awoke to the feeling of a sharp tug from his belt, the sound of 5 rapid pops of gunfire, a sharp curse, and the sensation of someone landing on top of him. He shot upright to find Sakura, bloody and battered, still clutching his Schofield, lying atop his lap. There before them stood a trio of ninja, the same trio of Sound Genin from the first exam. One of them, a black-haired girl, clutched her shoulder where Sakura had shot her. What's going on, Sakura? Naruto, they're not after our scroll. They're after Sasuke. They work for Orochimaru. The trio of Sound Nin rushed forward to attack, and Naruto rose to meet them, catching his knife and tomahawks as Sakura tossed them to him. He held the bowie in his teeth, a tomahawk in either hand, and launched himself at the Sound Nin. The trio met him with kunai drawn, and the battle began in earnest. Naruto blocked and parried with his hawks and the bowie in his teeth, dodging and contorting his body as he swung blow and counter blow toward them. But Naruto was scared. He couldn't feel the kyuubi, couldn't hear it in his head. His chakra control was shot. He was slower, his injuries not healing as fast as he was used to. He finally locked blades and shoved his 3 assailants away, launching the female into the brush. He jumped back to land next to Sakura. Sakura, I need your help. Whatever that snake bastard did to me ruined my chakra control. I need you to take this scroll. Unseal the last weapon in the list, and a box of .45 Schofield ammunition. He unbuckled his gunbelt and passed it to Sakura. The peacemakers loaded. When Sakura unsealed the weapon, the smoke cleared to reveal a pair of navy Colt cap and ball revolvers, their grips of worn and yellowed ivory. Naruto took them, spun them, and slid them butts forward into his waistband, speaking low to himself. James, I hope you're watchin'. 'Cause this is for you, pard. The 2 male Sound ninja stared before bolting toward Naruto. The shootist's hands moved almost of their own accord, dropping and twisting to grab the grips of the revolvers. In one fluid motion, the pistols came up and turned to bear on the advancing ninja. The pistol in Naruto's left hand barked one time, and the black-haired boy faltered in his rush, unhit, but kept advancing. The right-hand pistol cracked, and the bandage-covered Sound Genin dropped holding his knee. Naruto brought both revolvers around on the black-haired one and fired again, this time striking the boy low in the belly. He stumbled and fell, rolling to a stop against a tree. The black-haired boy was still defiant, despite being gut-shot. Nice weapons. What do you call 'em? I'll look good carrying them once I take them off your corpse. Sakura. You look horrible. Who did this to you? Croaked a hoarse voice. All faces turned to see Sasuke standing. The trio of comma-shaped marks from Orochimaru's bite had seemingly spread across all of Sasuke's body, and malevolent purple chakra was rolling off of him in visible waves. The black-haired boy grinned maniacally. That was all me, Uchiha. She's not that bad looking, you know. I bet I'll have lots of fun with her after we kill you. Sasuke growled, and the boy brought up his hands, which had tubes running from a hole in either palm down the length of his arms. Zenkuaha. His attack launched a blast of air pressure that tore a huge gash in the ground as it came and enveloped Sasuke. The dust settled to reveal nothing. He was gone. You're pretty proud of those arms, aren't you, Sound Nin? Sasuke snarled from right behind the boy before hurling a vicious kick to his head and sending him to the ground. Sasuke stepped one leg onto the boy's back, and grabbed the boy's wrists, torquing his arms back to their range. Let's see how you take losing them. Sasuke began to pull. The sound boy's screams mixed with the snaps of his arms breaking at the shoulders. Sasuke, stop. Please, stop, cried Sakura as she watched Sasuke torment the sound boy. Sasuke's face was twisted in a sneer of bloodthirsty glee, as if he were intensely enjoying the pain he was inflicting. She dropped the pistols in her hands and wrapped her arms around the Uchiha, begging him to stop. The marks receded, and he released the boy's arms. He stepped back, keeping his eye on the boy. Completely forgotten in all of the confusion was the female Sound Genin, who had been thrown into the forest by Naruto. She stalked toward Naruto like a hunting cat, a drawn kunai in her hand. She was 5 feet from Naruto when she was brought up short by the sound of something clicking. She stood suddenly and wheeled to stare into the eyes of Ikegata Tenten, and the business end of her peacemaker. Tenten's team had split in separate directions to confuse enemies. They already had their second scroll, and would meet at the base of the tower. Tenten now addressed the sound girl. That's my boyfriend you were about to attack. Don't bother trying to attack me, I'll just kill you before you can move. I guess you already know what this can do, though. Now back up slowly, into the clearing. They cleared the tree line and Tenten whistled to Naruto to get his attention. Found her trying to ambush you, Naruto-kun. Naruto turned to face Tenten and the sound nin. Hi, Tenten-chan. Thanks. He rounded on the female Sound Genin. What's your name? Kin. The mummy is Dosu, and the psych is Zaku. Kin, take your team and leave. Leave your scroll here, and go away. This is already an ugly situation, let's not make it any uglier, said Sakura. Kin's response was a withering glare. You're one to talk, Pinkett. You care more about looking pretty than you do about being a ninja. You disgust me. The only person here who looks like she gives a damn about being a kunoichi is the bun girl who got the drop on me. And even she looks like she'd faint at the sight of death. So, I say, sit and spin. And with that, she launched off the mark, toward Tenten, a fresh kunai in hand and ready to strike. Tenten brought up her revolver. The report of the Colt was sharp in the strangely silent clearing, and Kin slid limply to the ground, shot through the heart. She was dead before she hit the dirt. Naruto lowered his arm, the muzzle of his navy Colt still smoking. He'd reacted out of instinct when Kin had made to attack Tenten. He didn't remember drawing or firing. His girl stood there, her pistol still up and ready to fire. She was scared, it showed on her face. Naruto holstered the pistol in the waistband of his trousers and moved to wrap Tenten in a hug as she began to faint. It's alright, Ten-chan. Everything will be okay. I'm here, I won't let anything hurt you, I promise. He sent Tenten and Sakura over to Sasuke and Sakura, and sent the girls out of the clearing as he motioned his teammate over. Sasuke, you alright? Yeah, I'm good. Naruto looked at the 2 remaining Sound Genin. Zaku was moaning on the ground. Dosu leaned heavily upon a tree, some of his face bandages wrapped around his knee. So, Sasuke, what do we do about the other 2? I mean, I really don't feel like killing them. But on the other hand, they did do a number on Sakura, admit to being under orders from the snake bastard to kill you, and the one whose arms you wrecked was starting to get on my nerves until you came to and went to town on him. What say you? Sasuke looked at the sound ninja. I can't believe I'm saying this, Dobi, but I'll follow whatever you decide. Naruto took a pair of coins out of his pocket and tossed one to Sasuke. We both toss. If my coin is heads, we kill them and loot the bodies for supplies. Tails, and we take their gear and let them go. And my coin? Asked Sasuke. If we kill them, your coin decides whether or not we cut up the bodies as a warning to the snake bastard. Naruto looked at Sasuke with cold, emotionless eyes. Killer's eyes. Flip. Sasuke. Heads, we mutilate them, tails we bury them. Sasuke flipped the coin into the air and caught it. Tails. We bury them. Now you flip, Naruto, and see if we have to kill them. Naruto flipped. Tails. They go free, minus their gear. He turned to the two sound nin. Take all your weapons except one kunai each to defend yourselves with, and dump them in front of you. Do the same with your food. You get to keep one ration each. You also get to keep your medical kits. They complied wordlessly, though Zaku sneered at both Konoha ninja as he did. Sasuke stepped forward and searched each of them, then gathered the dropped equipment and looted Kin's body. He also relieved Dosu of his team's Earth Scroll. Naruto looked at the sound team and gestured toward the forest. The fence is that way. Take your teammate and keep walking. He watched as the two wounded ninja picked up the body of their teammate, and limped away into the forest. Naruto and Sasuke divided the spoils into 3 piles, went and retrieved the girls, and they moved to another clearing, near the river, to rest. So, Tenten-chan, where's your team? Don't tell me Lee and Neji are, Naruto started to say, but was cut off. No, they're fine. We decided that we'd split up, so as to confuse any pursuers and make it harder for them. Well, harder it may be for enemies to catch you, but if they do catch you it'll be a harder fight for you. If you'd like, you can come with us to the tower. I'd be delighted, Naruto-kun. By the way, what happened to the other sound genin? You didn't, did you? Naruto shook his head and looked around the clearing. Sasuke was sitting watch up in a tree, and Sakura was tending to her wounds by the edge of the river. Naruto gave the clearing one more once-over and turned back to the pot of stew he and Tenten were cooking. No, I didn't kill them. I took their gear to replace ours that we lost, and sent them toward the fence with 1 ration each, and 1 kunai each, and their third teammate. He looked up from the stew and hugged Tenten close for a moment before grinning and ladling out 3 bowls and handing her one. He bounced off with the other 2, to give them to Sasuke and Sakura. He came back and ladled out a bowl for himself. He dug in, and washed it down with a cup of coffee from the pot. I'll take first watch. The others bedded down, and Naruto sat down in the tree where Sasuke had been, his Henry across his lap. He looked up at the moon, and settled in. Dawn came and Naruto awoke. He'd been relieved by Tenten around midnight, and she'd watched until dawn. He heated up the remains of the coffee and called the others in. They settled on a plan to try and reach the tower by that afternoon. Naruto cooked a hearty breakfast of wild boar bacon and scrambled eggs, cornbread pancakes and leftover stew for gravy. After the dishes were washed and sealed back into the storage scroll, they set out. Their progress was fast, and they reached the tower just before noon. By the door stood Neji and Lee. Tenten bid Naruto good luck and kissed him before going to join her team. Team 7 entered the tower. So, if any of you wish to forfeit, you may, without any consequences for your team. From here on out, the Chunin exams are individual effort, said Enko as she addressed the group of genin standing before her in the arena. She'd just explained before that since so many teams still managed to pass the second exam, they had too many people for the third exam, and had to hold preliminaries to thin the group out. The only one to forfeit was Yakushi Kabuto, the boy who'd shown the ninja info cards to Sasuke before the first exam. The rest stood firm. Then let me introduce, said Enko, the referee for the prelims, Tokubetsu Junin Shiranui Genma. In a swirl of smoke appeared a Konoha ninja with a senbon sticking out of his mouth like a toothpick. The rules are simple. One-on-one fights. Victor is decided when one of you can't continue, either due to death, injury, or knockout, or by forfeit. If a clear winner is determined before knockout or kill, then I'll call the match. Matchups are random draw. First match is, he looked up to the electronic scoreboard above them, to see 2 names appear. Inuzuka Kiba versus Uzumaki Naruto. As the other genin filed out of the arena, Naruto calmly checked the loads on his pistols. His opponent, Kiba, stood eagerly across the field from him, bobbing and weaving like a boxer warming up. Hey, Uzumaki, we all know you're good with your weapons, but just how good are you without them? I'll beat you down in a heartbeat in a real fight. Naruto bristled. Okay. Inubaka, you want a stand-up match, be my guest. Blades and taijutsu only. He removed his long-arm cases and unbuckled his gunbelt. Sakura. Catch. Naruto threw his guns up to his teammate and pulled his tomahawks out of his other belt. Akamaru, stay out of the way for this fight. He's too easy to beat, and you deserve a rest. Kiba cracked his knuckles and settled into a taijutsu stance. Ready, fight, yelled Genma as he jumped out of the way. The two genin crashed together, Naruto swinging in with his hawks and Kiba launching a roundhouse right punch. Both dodged and leapt apart. Kiba threw a handful of kunai, and Naruto ducked the flying blades. Naruto whipped one tomahawk through the air, and Kiba dodged only just in time to catch Naruto's left leg across the temple. Kiba rolled and came back to his feet. He launched into his family's signature jutsu, the all-fours technique, and rocketed into his opponent with a massive shoulder check that hurled Naruto across the arena. See, I told you that you weren't any good without your guns. And you said you'd become Hokage one day. Ha, they'd do better letting me take the position. Naruto stood, cracked his neck and glared at Kiba. You crossed the wrong line, mutt. Now you'd best get ready to cry, 'cause I'm bringin' the pain. Naruto drew his bowie and erupted off his mark, leaping into the fray with a roar and bringing the blade around, then a knee strike to Kiba's exposed groin as he leaned back to avoid the knife. Kiba blocked the knee and brought an elbow to Naruto's head, and Naruto slipped the blow like a boxer, head-butted Kiba in the chest, and then brought his head up into Kiba's chin in a vicious Liverpool kiss. Kiba threw a second elbow, and mashed Naruto's lips against his teeth, then a knee into Naruto's belly. Naruto recovered, stomped down hard on Kiba's instep, and let fly a blistering 1-2 combo with his fists to Kiba's kidneys. Kiba responded with a combination of his own, 2 jabs to Naruto's chest and a right cross to his jaw, then a hard left that busted Naruto's nose. Both fighters knew this was no time for fancy tricks, no time for strategy. It was an old-fashioned blood-slinging brawl, root hog or die. They continued to slug, Naruto's blades dropped and forgotten until they broke apart one last time and Naruto picked them up, panting and bloodied. Naruto was tired, and he could tell Kiba was as well. The two staggered apart, and Naruto, huffing and puffing, spoke again. One last go round, Kiba. For all the marbles, winner take all. Agreed. Fine. The pair came together, Kiba launching one last all-fours, which Naruto sidestepped. Naruto turned, cracked Kiba across the skull with the back of his tomahawk head, and then yanked him up off the ground by the hair and laid the blade of his bowie just above Kiba's eyebrows. Where my first sensei came from, Kiba-san, there was a practice that the natives used to perform on enemies they respected. It's called scalping. How it works is you take a knife and cut all the way around the top of their head, then pull off their scalp. You fought hard, Kiba-san. The Inuzuka looked frightened for a moment, then smiled. Well, if the positions were reversed, Naruto-san, I'd lift your hair, too. Genma stepped forward and raised his hand. Winner, Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto sheathed his knife. You know, Kiba, you just wouldn't look right bald, so I think I'll leave your scalp on your head. Naruto picked Kiba up and steadied him with an arm around his shoulder, and they staggered together, 2 bloody and battered brothers in arms, laughing all the way, off the field. After Naruto and Kiba made it back up to the stands, they were simultaneously accosted by their female teammates. Sakura took Naruto in hand to try and patch him up while Kiba was led away by Hyuga Hinata. Naruto, you look like you just went through a grinder. Sakura fussed over him for 15 minutes while she cleaned the cuts on him, and bandaged him. There's nothing I can do for the nose, though, except straighten it back out and hope it heals right. You don't have time. You're up. Naruto pointed to the screen. Sasuke's match had just ended. He'd been paired against Akado Yoroi. Apparently he'd handled himself well, and won. The next match was Sakura versus her rival, Ino. Go get 'em. Sakura smiled, grabbed Naruto's nose and wrenched it back into place, then bounded down the stairs to the arena. Naruto screamed and went to hunt for Kiba. Naruto found him in the care of Hinata, just as bandaged as he. "I'd have a word with you, Kiba, if you don't mind." The dog boy smiled and asked Hinata to go grab some food from the vendors. "Don't tell me you rethought taking my hair, Naruto." He stood and walked over to the shooter, clapping him on the back. "What's on your mind, Naruto?" "Just another native tradition. One of friendship. I wanted to ask you if you wanted to do it. Man needs friends, you know. How's it work?" "It's called Blood Brothers. We cut our palms and mix blood. After that, they say we'll be like brothers. If you ever need help, I'm honor bound to help, and vice versa. What's mine is yours, and so on." Kiba smiled. "I'll go with that." He pulled out a kunai and sliced his palm. Naruto did the same with his bowie. The two smacked their hands together. "Brothers," growled Naruto with a feral grin. "Pack," snarled Kiba, his eyes wild. Naruto looked out into the arena just in time to see Sakura and Ino belt each other, resulting in a double knockout. Naruto looked over to Kiba, who was bandaging his hand. "Hey, Kiba, how's about after these fights are over, you bring your team to my place? I'll invite the rest of my team, and I'll cook us up a good meal." "You can cook. Been cookin' ever since I was little. And before you ask, no, that doesn't count instant ramen. Just ask my teammates or my girlfriend about my cooking." "Girlfriend?" Naruto pointed over to Tenten and smiled. Kiba grinned. "She's a good one. I tell you what, Naruto, instead of me bringing my team to your apartment, how about you bring your guys to my house, and you bring some of your cooking over there?" "Sounds like a plan." Naruto leaned back and dozed off. Naruto was awakened by Kiba. "Hey, Naruto, wanna watch your girl fight? It's her match." "Who's she up against?" "My teammate, Hinata." Naruto sat up and went to the rail. Hinata stood in a Jiyuken stance, while Tenten stood ready with a pair of wakizashi. They came together quickly, which was surprising to everyone. Hyuga Hinata was known to be a meek, quiet girl, who would sooner faint than fight. Tenten lost her swords in the scuffle, and pulled Hinata into a full Nelson. "Hinata, this is new. I didn't know you could fight this well." "I'm fighting because I know someone I love is watching," said Hinata as they broke apart and then came together again, Tenten now armed with kunai. "Ooh, who is he?" asked Tenten as they continued to fight. The response she got was stunning. "Uzumaki Naruto." They stopped. "You're in love with Naruto." The nod she got confirmed it. "Well, I hate to break your heart, Hinata-chan, but Naruto already has a girl." Hinata looked shocked. "Who? Me?" Hinata rushed in again, and Tenten decided that she was through with playing. She reached behind her back, drew her peacemaker from her waistband, and brought it up, cocked, to rest just beneath Hinata's jaw. She felt a faint buzz of chakra next to her head, and glanced over. Hinata's hand was next to Tenten's temple, ready to blast chakra into her skull. "Stand off," said Tenten. "Funny. Hey, Hinata, betcha I know a secret you'd just love to hear. You know your teammate, Kiba. Well, he feels the same way about you, as you do about Naruto. He's head over heels for you, has been ever since you were both little." "Kiba loves me," said Hinata as she stepped back, distracted. It was a mistake. Tenten strode forward a step and knocked her cold with the barrel of the pistol. "Winner, Tenten. Woo. Go, Ten-chan," yelled Naruto from the stands. Tenten waved and ran up to the stands and into his arms. As they were about to walk off, Tenten turned to Kiba and smiled. "Expect a talk from Hinata. I had to tell her about your feelings for her to win. Distracted her so I could get her." She and Naruto walked away, leaving a flabbergasted Inuzuka Kiba behind. Naruto was in high spirits as he rounded up the rest of his and Tenten's teams. Lee was in the hospital, broken up from his fight with the Suna ninja, Sabaku no Gara. Judging from the look of it, he wouldn't be crushing bricks for a long time. Neji just snorted and walked off to tend to his own affairs. The rest, Naruto invited over to supper at Kiba's house that evening. Then, Naruto took his leave of the group and went back to his apartment to start cooking. That evening, everyone was gathered around the table at the Inuzuka home, waiting on the arrival of the last guest. There suddenly came a knocking at the door, and Kiba opened it to reveal a 10-deep line of Narutos, each carrying something different. One came in with a pole across his shoulders, a huge pot of stew hanging from either end. 3 pairs supported 3 colossal covered platters. One carried a pair of massive baskets filled with biscuits and cornbread. And the last 2 were straining underneath the weight of a gargantuan cake shaped like the Konoha spiral leaf symbol. They deposited the food on the table, where sat Kiba's team, Naruto's team, Tenten, Kiba's mom, and his older sister. The 9 shadow clones then disappeared, leaving Naruto standing with a grin on his face. In actuality, Naruto was exhausted by the effort of creating that many clones. His chakra control was still out of whack. I've heard horror stories about the appetite of the Inuzuka clan. So I cooked a lot of food. He leaned over and uncovered the covered platters. On one was an entire roast boar, while on another lay a brace of deer, whole and gleaming with barbecue sauce. And for the last, this old boy gave me a heck of a fight, but I finally got him. Voila! Naruto whipped the cover off of the largest platter to reveal an entire roasted bear. Everyone gaped at the spread, not just the delectable-looking food put out by Kiba's mom and sister, but also the food Naruto had brought. Kiba hauled Naruto over to where his mother and sister sat, and made introductions. Naruto, this is my mom, Inuzuka Sume, and my older sister, Inuzuka Hana. Mom, sis, this is Naruto. So you're the one who put this pup through the ringer. He looked like he'd been mauled, spoke Hana. I didn't look too much better afterward, myself. He's a fighter, for sure, replied Naruto. I'm pretty certain my nose is still a little out of joint from that one hit, despite what Sakura did for it. Kiba laughed and raised his shirt to reveal bandages wrapped around his torso. Cracked 3 ribs. Naruto laughed and then turned to Sume. Inuzuka-san, you should be proud of Kiba here. You raised a good kid. Sume smiled and patted Naruto on the shoulder. No need to be so proper, Naruto. Sume's just fine. Now, let's see if any of this is fit to eat. I'm hungry. Everyone grinned and laughed at that, and even more when Naruto remarked, I second that, Sume. I'm so hungry, my stomach thinks my throat's been cut. They dug into the food, swapping stories back and forth, joking and having a grand time. Naruto's cooking was a hit, with people passing plates for seconds and thirds of it. After the meats had been reduced to bones, and the last bit of stew mopped up with the last biscuit, the crowd retired to the spacious backyard to relax. Sume looked over at Naruto and asked him, Naruto, when you had Kiba by the hair, what was it you were doing? Were you punch drunk and missed holding the knife to his throat? You had it to his head. Ah, that. It's a long story. You know about how 6 years ago I left the village. She nodded. Well, my sensei was from a land far to the west of here, and he told me stories about life in his land. His people had colonized the place where he grew up, and the natives there had a practice they did with defeated enemies, but only the honorable ones, the ones who put up a good fight. He went on to describe scalping, and Sume nodded. Did your sensei tell you anything else about these natives? He did. In his land were different tribes, some friendly, and some not. He had mostly dealt with the Lakota and Cheyenne. They were both tribes of fierce warriors, proud and strong. The greatest warriors of the Cheyenne, the fiercest in battle, were called in their language, Medanioo. Dog soldiers. Kiba's a dog soldier in the truest sense, and he fights like one. I'm happy to call him my blood brother. Sakura heard and lifted an eyebrow. Blood brother. Naruto turned his hand up and showed the slash on his palm. Another Cheyenne practice. Kiba showed his palm, with a matching mark. Yeah, Sakura. We cut our palms and grabbed hands. Our blood mixed, and cemented us as blood brothers. At that, every female in attendance rolled their eyes and thought the same thought. Men. Naruto picked up where Kiba left off. Blood brothers are as tight as real brothers. If Kiba, or any kin of his ever needs help, I'm honor bound to lend a hand, and if I need it, he's honor bound to do the same. The Cheyenne only did it with people they deeply respected. And with the way he chewed me up in that match, I have a great deal of respect for him. The party picked up from there with music and dancing, until the hour grew late, and Sum extended an invitation to stay the night. The teams piled into bed, and slept. The next day, Naruto awoke early and bid a fair adieu to the Inuzuka estate. He went back to his apartment, belted on his gun belt, thrust all his other revolvers into pockets in his waistband and slung his longarm cases across his back, and set off to find a place to train. He found a spot near the hot springs and dug out some paper targets from his war bag, tacking them up on trees all around the clearing. He stood, surrounded by targets. Smoothly, Naruto drew his Schofield, bringing it level and cocking the hammer. Naruto feathered the trigger and the pistol barked, but Naruto didn't check where he hit. He swung the muzzle to the next target, and the next, until he'd fired all 5 rounds. He holstered the pistol and drew his peacemaker, and fired from the hip, 1 round per target. When it ran dry, he pulled the Patterson from his waistband and fired. He did the same with each pistol until he was down to just the Navy Colts, stuck as always butts forward in his waistband. He drew, just as James had always done, just as he had done, in the forest, and fired. 10 shots, one after the other, and 10 targets hung with their eyes shot out. Naruto stuck the Navy's back in his waistband and checked his watch. 1 minute and 10 seconds. 60 rounds in 70 seconds. Won't be that fast in combat, with my targets trying to kill me, too. Naruto was about to change the targets and practice with his Henry when he caught the faint sound of someone laughing, outside his clearing. He carefully thumbed back the hammer of his Henry and went to investigate. Hunkered down by the fence around the springs was an old man dressed like a kabuki actor, giggling and occasionally scribbling something in a notebook. Naruto cleared his throat and the man turned. Naruto eased the hammer down on the rifle and laid it across his shoulders. You know, it's mighty rude to be peeking on people in the springs. It's not peeking, brat. It's research. Research, huh, well, that might be what you call it, but I bet there's other words for it. Like peeking. And I wonder what the ladies on the other side of that fence would say if they knew you were out here. Let's see. Naruto smiled evilly and yelled at the top of his voice. Hey, girls, thanks for the show. Pervert. Happy trails, ol' man. And with that, Naruto hot-footed it away as fast as he could. He didn't want to get caught in that beating. It was 2 hours later when the old man caught up with Naruto. The fox boy was trying as best he could to practice chakra control by tree walking, and failing miserably. His control was wrecked. You're not doing it right, brat. The peeping Tom limped out of the brush, looking like he'd been trampled in a stampede. Well, I used to be able to do this easy, until I got lambasted by some weird technique during the second exam. The old man looked at him. You wouldn't happen to be Uzumaki Naruto, would you? Uzumaki Naruto, or Naruto Hickok, at your service. You. Naruto was suspicious. Just who was this old pervert, anyway? The old man started to go into some weird dance, until he was brought up short by the sound of the Henry's lever working. I asked your name, not if you could do a rain dance. Jiraiya of the Densetsu no Sanin. Also, author of the world-renowned novel series Ika Ika Paradise, and former Junin sensei of the Yondaime Hokage. Jiraiya had seen that weapon before, in the hands of another man, a man who had been called, Shootist. Where'd you come by that weapon? Inherited it from my first sensei. His name was James Hickok. He gave me his title, too. I'm the Shootist. I met him once, years back. Good man. Oh, and I could fix your chakra if you want. It's the least I could do for James's old student. He saved me from a fate worse than death once. Dragged you out of a brothel before the ladies found out you were broke. No, as a matter of fact. He rescued me after I'd been poisoned by a specially formed team of Iowa Nin, all of them female, all of them trained in torture, and all of them carrying grudges against me for my part in the last war. So he dragged you out of a brothel before the ladies found out you were broke. Shut up and lift your shirt. I need to see your torso. Naruto lifted his shirt. Now try and channel a little chakra. Naruto complied, and his seal became visible. Ah, there's the problem. This might sting a little. Jiraiya channeled chakra into his hand, and cried, Gogyo Fuinkai. Before slamming it into the marks of Orochimaru's seal. Naruto passed out. Naruto awoke propped against a tree. What happened? He slurred as he came awake. Jiraiya was sitting nearby, writing in his notebook. The snake put a seal over mine. It screwed up your control and cut me off. The old pervert broke the seal. Glad to hear from you again, Kyuubi. Hey, Arrow Sennin. Thanks. Naruto stood and brushed the dirt off of himself, then picked up his guns and made ready to go. I got a split. Got training to do, and only a month to do it in. Naruto wiped the sweat from his face with his bandana and looked at his watch. 3 days had passed since he'd met the old man by the springs, and Naruto had been hard at work. Each day was a new challenge. Naruto now decided to take a break and see to other business. He went back to his apartment and cleaned up, then made his way to the Hokage's tower. Ji-san, how've you been? Naruto beamed when he entered the office. Naruto, it's good to see you in such good spirits, replied the Hokage as he looked up from his paperwork. How have you been? I've been doing well, the boy said as he plopped himself into a chair. But I was wondering if I could ask you a couple questions. Go ahead, Naruto, and I'll try to help you if I can. 2 things, Ji-san. First, are there any tracts of land for sale, preferably forest or some sort of rough country? I don't need much, only 5 acres or so. I'll see what I can find, Naruto. The Hokage understood why Naruto would want to find his own land. His apartment was in constant danger of burglary and vandalism, and hadn't been properly repaired or maintained by anyone other than Naruto in many a year. What was the other question? Naruto's face grew grim and his eyes grew cold and angry. I'd like to know as much as possible about the man who killed James. As much as I have access to, or a name at least. The Hokage frowned. He'd heard about Naruto's vow to kill the man who'd killed James, and had hoped that the boy would abandon that quest. Naruto, are you sure you want revenge? The man you're after, he's got more people's blood on his hands than just James's. So you know who he is? Naruto, the man you seek is a nuke nin from here. He killed his entire clan, save one. Naruto looked confused for a moment, as if mulling over the Hokage's words. Then he looked up, and looked the Hokage squarely in the eye. Hokage-sama, I'll tell you now, my revenge won't interfere with my job, but I won't rest either, not until I ride back through these gates with that Uchiha's scalp hanging from my belt. I just want to know, what's his name? Itachi. Uchiha Itachi. Thank you for the information, Ji-san. I've got things to do now, so bye. Naruto beamed and bounded out of the office, headed for Ichiraku's. Naruto was sitting at Ichiraku's about to tie into his second bowl when Sasuke sat down next to him. Naruto, we need to talk. About what, Sasuke? A certain mutual enemy of ours. Oh, you mean your brother? I already told the Hokage this morning, I'm not gonna let that trail swallow me, but I ain't restin' until I cut up his corpse for the vultures and bring his scalp back for evidence. By an unspoken agreement, they left the stand and walked toward a deserted training ground. He killed my family, Naruto. I've got a right to vengeance. I think I've got more of a right than you. Naruto just smiled. I tell you what, Sasuke, how about we make a deal? We both want Itachi's life, and both of us have a legitimate right to it. He killed your family, true, but he also killed mine. The first 6 years of my life, I was beaten and mistreated, damn near starved, damn near stabbed, and lived in terror the whole time. I was on my own from the time I drew my first breath. James treated me like I was his own son, raised me up to be a proper man, and showed me the love I'd missed for those 6 years. He was family to me, Sasuke. Sasuke looked thoughtful, which Naruto figured was as close to sympathy as he'd get from the Uchiha. What's your proposition, Naruto? We work together. We're riding the same trail, so why not ride it together? And besides, 2 sets of eyes and ears should pick up twice the word and twice the sign. We'll figure out who gets to kill him once we find him. Naruto stuck out his hand to shake, and Sasuke hesitantly took it and shook. Deal. But if you get in my way when the time comes, Naruto, I'll kill you too. Same to you, Sasuke. You get between me and him when I draw down on him, I'll see if my sharps really can punch through one man to kill another. The two departed, and Naruto went to try and find Tenten. Tenten was hard at work, not in training, but in working on a special present for Naruto. It was coming up on their 1-month anniversary, and she wanted to give him something that would blow him away. She had carefully completed the hardest part of the project, making each part by hand, and now all that was left was the assembly. It had taken some research, and few trips to the library to learn all she needed to know to create her gift, but it was worth it in her eyes. She finished the last piece just as Naruto knocked on the door to the shop. She hastily slid the case under the workbench and went to the door. Naruto, come in, come in. She fairly dragged him into the shop. Naruto, guess what tomorrow is? Tuesday. What else? Well, if my figuring's right, it'll be 1 month tomorrow since we first got together. Do you have plans? I was hoppin'. We could go for a ride up in the hills and picnic, to celebrate. Tenten smiled, and wrapped him up in a hug. No, I don't have plans tomorrow. Meet at Ichiraku's. Naruto fairly glowed when he nodded and kissed her, before darting off with a shouted, see you later, Ten-chan. Naruto went back to his apartment, and dug until he found the gift he'd made for Tenten. Naruto looked it over, and decided that it was a little on the plain side, so he pulled out his gear, and began to work. The next day, the two met at Ichiraku's just at noon. Afternoon, Ten-chan, ready for our picnic. He indicated the basket sitting on the counter next to him. Ready and willing, Naru-kun. Naruto stepped out of the ramen stall and into the street. He nipped his thumb and performed Kuchio's no jutsu. Out of the smoke appeared a familiar black stallion. Naruto. Good to see you, bellowed Widowmaker. You feel like testing your skills again? Not right now, Widowmaker. I'd like to introduce you to Ikegata Tenten, my girlfriend. It's our 1-month anniversary, and we were planning on a picnic up in the hills. I know this one spot, really pretty, but it's a rough trail, and I was wondering if you'd mind us riding. I don't mind at all, kid. Mount up. Naruto swung astride the horse and helped Tenten up with the picnic basket. Widowmaker set off at an easy canter, and they made their way into the forest and the mountains. They arrived an hour later, and dismounted at the edge of a clearing. All over the clearing grew wildflowers, in many a color. Naruto reached into the basket and pulled out a blanket, and spread it beneath the wide limbs of an oak. I found this clearing when I was 3. The trail is so rough that hardly anybody comes up here, so it was a good place to go when I needed to get away. Tenten smiled, but didn't miss the double meaning in Naruto's joking words. Naruto began pulling out food and laying it out. There were cold cuts and bread, an apple pie, and of course a large to-go pot of ramen from Ichiraku's. They sat down and began to eat, laughing and having fun all the while. Naruto finally reached into the basket, popped a false bottom out of it, and pulled out a paper-wrapped package tied with a rawhide thong. I figured you were probably a little tired of always carrying your peacemaker in the waistband of your pants, so I set out to fix that. Hope you like it. He handed her the package and she untied the thong, unwrapped the paper and revealed a brown leather gun belt and holster, tooled with simple roses and ivy leaves and ending in a brass buckle engraved with the Konoha leaf. Tenten stared speechless at it as Naruto went on. There's cartridge loops so you can hold extra rounds, and the holster's got some hidden snaps so you can adjust where it rides, or take the holster off entirely if you want. I know it's not that well made, but I hope you like it. Tenten found her voice as she buckled the belt onto her waist. She looked up smiling. It's beautiful, Naru-chan. Thank you. I love that you made it yourself. I got a gift for you, too. She reached into her bag and pulled out a scroll. She unsealed a simple wood box. Naruto opened the box and his jaw dropped. It was a pair of pistols. A matched pair of flintlock pistols. Walnut stocks, blued steel barrels, exactly alike. In the center of each checkered grip was carved a fox with a kanji on its back. The kanji were different, but that was the only difference between the guns. Naruto took each pistol out and looked at the grips, reading them aloud. Inazuma, and Kaminari. Thunder, and lightning. Appropriate, isn't it? It was a pain doing the research to make them, but I think I did okay. They're .50 caliber, so the bullet mold for your sharps should be good to make ammo for these. You made these yourself. Every part, right down to the stocks. How'd I do? They're beautiful, simple, yet elegant. Just like you, Ten-chan. Tenten smiled and kissed him. Naruto grinned big and reached into his ever-present possible bag for powder and ball. What do you say we give Thunder and Lightning a test fire? He poured a measure of powder down each muzzle and then pulled out some bullets he'd meant to load into cartridges for his sharps. He started each, then rammed them home with the ramrod. He primed the flash pan and handed Lightning butt first to Tenten. What's the target? Tenten asked. Naruto pointed to a knot on a tree across the clearing from them. It was at least 25 yards distant, pushing accuracy for most black powder pistols. Tenten took careful aim and fired. Lightning belched flame and smoke. When it cleared, she let out a whoop at the sight of the knot blasted to splinters. Naruto raised Thunder and sighted in on the same tree. I'll try for that limb right above your knot. He fired, and the branch snapped off inches from the trunk. These are some of the best pistols I've ever toted. Tenten, you're an artist. He picked her up and swung her around him before putting her down and kissing her. Thank you, Tenten-chan. Thank you. The two spent the rest of day in the clearing shooting, and throwing knives and tomahawks, and having fun together, until finally the sun set over the mountains and Naruto summoned Widowmaker to ride back. Tenten leaned back against his chest as they rode, and soon fell asleep to the gentle rocking of the horse and the sound of Naruto's heartbeat in her ear. Naruto rode up to Tenten's house, took her in his arms, and carried her inside. He looked around, went into the living room he saw off to one side, and laid her gently on the couch, her pistol belt and holstered Colt close to hand, and kissed her on the forehead. Sleep tight, Ten-chan. She's really something, isn't she? Naruto bolted upright and wheeled. Tenten's father stepped out of the shadows where he'd been watching. Let's step into the kitchen, Uzumaki-san. Naruto followed Mr. Ikeda into the kitchen, and waited for the man to speak again. Ikeda Tenji turned and leaned on the countertop and looked Naruto over. Uzumaki-san, you have been my daughter's boyfriend for how long now? 1 month today, Ikeda-san. Tenten-chan and I went up to the hills for a picnic to celebrate. I swear nothing happened. Naruto started to sweat a little. He didn't know what Tenten's dad was on about, but it had him on edge. I didn't think anything happened, Uzumaki. Tenten describes you as a perfect gentleman. I just wanted to get a feel of what your intentions were regarding my daughter, for myself. Tenji laughed. Naruto gulped. My intentions? I couldn't tell you, to be honest, but I know this much. All I want is for Ten-chan to be happy. Good answer, Uzumaki-san. Because if you ever hurt her, then I'm not the one you'll have to worry about. Now head on home. Oh, and stop by sometime, don't be a stranger. Tenji smiled warmly and patted Naruto on the back. Naruto headed out the door of Tenten's house and made his way back to his apartment. There he found his apartment door unlocked, his rooms ransacked and torn apart, and graffiti sprayed all over the walls. Naruto closed his door, shoved a chair under the knob to hold it closed, and started picking up his things. Most of his clothes were so badly cut apart that he wrote them off. His food was scattered and looked as if it had been chewed by animals. He tossed that as well. He finally got everything he could keep sealed into a pair of storage scrolls, and tossed the rest into the dumpster outside. He headed for the landlord's office, set in his purpose. The landlord was surprised when the demon brat walked into his office, and not in a pleasant way. "What are you doing in here, Dema?" His voice was cut off by a sharp blow to the chest, and he found himself with a knife to his throat. "I'm here to tell you I'm moving out, but not before I settle up accounts with you." "Let's see." Naruto rubbed his chin with his free hand before continuing. "You've been overcharging me for rent ever since I started living here, so we'll call it 600 Ryu. You forgot to keep up the maintenance on my apartment, forcing me to do it myself or pay out of pocket to get things fixed. Another 600. I'll forget all the other times that people got into my apartment without having to break in, and just settle up for tonight. I lost food, I lost clothes, I lost furniture, and I'm taking the cost of them. 800 Ryu. Naruto held his blade to the man's throat, while a Cage Bunshin took the landlord's wallet out of his pocket, counted out 2,000 Ryu, and slid the bills into Naruto's pocket. The boy then darted backwards out of the room and vanished into the night. Naruto woke up the next day and stretched. He'd spent the night in the park, and trees tended to be hard on his back. He walked down to the stream nearby, pulled out a mirror from his shaving kit, and shaved before straightening his clothes and walking into the business district. He needed new clothes. 4 hours later, he was the owner of several new sets of clothing, and was merrily on his way to the Hokage's office. Naruto walked into the office just as the landlord finished his tale of how the incorrigible demon brat had trashed an apartment, barged into his office, and robbed him at knife point, violently assaulting him in the process. "Quit lying, you gassy windbag, before I decide to help let some of that hot air out of you," Naruto snarled as the man wheeled in surprise. The Hokage looked at Naruto and spoke. "Naruto, could you explain what happened last night, from your point of view?" "Gladly, Hokage-sama. I came back from a date with my girlfriend to find my door unlocked and standing wide open. I always lock my door when I leave the apartment. The lock wasn't forced, it was unlocked with a key. My rooms were tossed, my spare clothes cut to doll rags, my food scattered all over, half eaten, and graffiti painted on the walls. A great deal of my things were beyond repair. I just got back from buying new clothes. Thankfully, I didn't have anything anyone else considered valuable, or I'd have probably been robbed, too." "Then what happened, Naruto?" asked the Hokage. "I picked up my stuff. I sealed everything that was still usable into some scrolls and threw the rest in the dumpster. Then I went and settled up with the landlord here. I figured he owed me for overcharging me on the rent, not maintaining my apartment, and always letting people into my room to wreak havoc. So I convinced him, with the help of my bowie, to hold still, and I took 2,000 Ryu from him. The punch was because he was about to say a certain word I don't like. I moved out." Naruto snarled at the landlord again before turning a sheepish look to the Hokage. "Coincidentally, Ji-san, you wouldn't happen to have had any luck with that favor I asked you, would you?" The Hokage glared at the landlord and silently signaled the Anbu hidden in the corner to arrest him when he walked out of the office. "You are dismissed, sir. And so is your case against Naruto." The man walked out and into the waiting arms of the Anbu. The old man turned back to Naruto. "As a matter of fact, Naruto, I know of a tract up for sale. 15 acres of forest land halfway up the mountain. Nobody wants it because the trail is nearly impassable." Naruto reached into his pack, and unsealed a check that had been sent to him from the office of the Mizukage. It had arrived 3 days prior, the bounty for Momochi Zabuza. "Will this cover it?" He handed the check over. "This will be more than enough. Do you want me to use the rest to hire?" He was cut off by Naruto. "No, thank you, Ji-san. I'll do my own building up there." The Hokage was surprised. If you say so, Naruto-kun. The Hokage pulled a sheet of paper out of his desk drawer and slid it over to Naruto. Just sign on the dotted line. Naruto swiftly scribbled his name in, and the Hokage stamped it. He smiled. Congratulations, Naruto, you now own 15 acres of land, free and clear. The Hokage counted out Naruto's change and handed it to him. I do hope you won't mind my visiting every now and then. You're welcome to warm your feet at my fire anytime, Ji-san, Naruto replied as he pocketed the money and folded the deed up before putting it into his pocket. The two spent the next half hour sitting and chatting before Naruto finally excused himself and left the office. Hey, Kiba, can I have a quick word with you? Naruto asked after stopping at the Inuzuka estate on his way to Ichiraku's. The Inuzuka grinned and Akamaru barked. Sure, Naruto. What's up? Naruto pulled out the deed from his pocket. I was wondering if you wanted to take a look at my new property with me. Kiba looked at the deed and laughed. Sure, Naruto. Let me go get a map so we can see how to get there. He darted down the hall and into his study, coming out with a map. Let's go. Naruto grabbed Kiba by the shoulder and stopped him. First, a stop off for lunch at Ichiraku's. My treat. After the boys and Akamaru ate, they set out toward the mountains, to find Naruto's property. They soon found it, and the trail really was nigh impossible to navigate. Naruto vowed to fix that the first chance he got, especially after the second time his tree-walking skills were the only thing that kept him from going over a cliff when the trail got slippery. He didn't intend to make it easy to get to his house, but he would make it less life-threatening. They soon emerged onto a flat shelf halfway up the side of the mountain, thickly forested with pine and cedar. Both boys stood speechless as they looked out over the village. The view was awe-inspiring. Kiba soon found his voice. He looked at the map, and then tapped Naruto on the shoulder, breaking the blonde out of his shock. According to the map, Naruto, your property includes this flat section, and runs down all the way to the head of the trail, down at the base of the mountain. This flat spot looks about 5 or 6 acres. You need any contractors, numbers? I could ask Mom or Hannah. No thanks, Kiba. I bought this land myself, cash money, and I'm gonna build it up myself, too. Naruto unsealed a tent from his gear and set it up. If you want, you could lend a hand. The more, the merrier. Naruto smiled, a tear starting to form in his eye. I just can't believe it, Kiba. This is my land, mine. My new home. I know what you mean, Naruto. Come on, let's head back to town so we can round up a few more hands and some tools. He took Naruto by the shoulder and they started back down the mountain while Akamaru stayed to guard Naruto's tent. When the pair reached town, they stopped first at the Haruno residence, and Naruto yelled up to Sakura. Hey, Sakura, I need to talk with you. It's important. Sakura came out, her hair a mess. She'd been asleep when Naruto yelled. What is it, Naruto? Guess what, Sakura, I have new home. Or, at least, I have 15 acres of land up on the mountain, but Kiba and I are gonna build a home there. And we were wondering if you'd want to lend a hand. Sakura smiled a little. You're serious? I'll give it a shot, but I think you're crazy, Naruto. What do you know about building houses? She was wrapped up in a hug as a reply. Naruto hadn't even listened to her. Thanks, Sakura-chan, said Kiba as he watched Naruto race off toward the next house. We'll meet at the base of the mountain in a few hours. It shouldn't take us that long to get the rest of the gang and some tools. He then left to catch up with Naruto, leaving Sakura standing in her front yard, staring at the two retreating backs. The next several houses went much the same way. In a short time, the entirety of Teams 7 and 8, plus Tenten, were assembled at the foot of the mountain waiting on Kiba and Naruto. The two trotted up, grinning ear to ear, loaded down with tools. Let's go, guys, shouted Naruto as he waved a pickaxe like a saber and charged up the trail. The rest followed him. They made it up the mountain to the flat shelf and sat down to rest. It had been tricky going and had tired them a little. Naruto dropped his pick and walked over to a spot, then started scratching lines in the dirt, until he'd marked off a rectangle of 15 feet by 12 feet. Here's where it'll go. My house. The others watched as Naruto walked over to the pile of tools and selected an axe. Sakura, you asked me what I know about building houses. I don't know that much about fancy carpentry, but I learned enough about fixing things in a house while I lived in the apartment, to where I think'll manage. I also learned a little about building from James. My house is going to be a cabin. But the first thing is to sink the corner posts. Somebody grab that saw over on the pile. Naruto selected 4 similarly sized trees and marked them with a slash in the bark. Kiba and Tenten picked up the short 2-man saw from Naruto's pile and followed. The slashed trees are the posts. I need them down, and we'll cut them to size once they're on the ground. He swung his axe into the one nearest him as he finished speaking. Throughout that day, they rotated on and off the various jobs. Kiba's teammate, Aburame Shino, used the Kikai insects that lived inside his body to check trees for rot or parasites, and Akamaru went down holes to root out any animals that lived within. Sasuke's fire just you came in handy for fire hardening the ends of cut logs. Naruto's cage bunchen were an enormous help when it came to moving the heavy logs. The 4 marked trees came down in short order, and were soon stripped of bark and branches, then cut off to the same length and sunk into holes that had been dug at the corners of Naruto's lines in the ground. The holes were filled in with concrete and set. Then began the laborious part of the work, building the walls. Each tree that came down had to be stripped like the corner posts, cut to length, then notched at the ends, holes drilled for pegs, and then laid in place as part of the wall and driven down to set the pegs in place. Hinata's healing salve saw much use to treat the blisters and cuts that soon developed, and everyone soon learned to identify which person had smashed their thumb with something by which profanities were shouted. Nobody knew that Hinata could cuss like she could, until Sasuke dropped the end of a log on her foot. As it neared time for supper, the group gathered to survey what they'd accomplished. The walls were up, and a doorway stood ready for a door. The trees were down and ready to be cut into poles for framing the roof, and Sasuke had started, at Naruto's request, to search for stone to use in flooring the cabin. All in all, they were pretty satisfied with their work. They emerged from the trees to find several shadow clones of Naruto sitting next to the trail. These clones had been hard at work improving the trail. Naruto dispelled all but one, who he posted as guard, and escorted his guests down the mountain and into town. Thanks, guys, for the help today. I really appreciated it. Not a problem, Naruto, replied Kiba. Akamaru yipped and licked Naruto's leg in agreement. Happy to help, Naruto, said Sakura, but if you ever wake me up like that again, I'll flatten you. Shino shrugged and patted Naruto on the shoulder, and Sasuke smirked and nodded slightly. Hinata whispered something about it was no trouble, and edged a little closer to Kiba. Tenten kissed Naruto on the cheek and smiled. It was my pleasure, Naruto. Will you need help tomorrow? Naruto blushed. I probably will. Got to get that roof up, at least. In the meantime, let's all get home. Each set out to their own houses, and Naruto was left standing at the foot of the mountain. He turned and followed Kiba back to his house for supper, and then went up to relieve his shadow clone at the building site. He bedded down that night and fell asleep to the sounds of the forest, and the happy thought that he was home. The next day, Naruto was awakened by Akamaru burrowing under his blanket and cold nosing him in the ribs. He shot up to see Kiba, Shino, Sakura, and Tenten gathered around him. Morning, guys. Where's Sasuke and Hinata? Sasuke's off training with Kakashi-sensei, replied Sakura. Kiba suppressed a snarl when Naruto mentioned Hinata. Sakura looked at the Inuzuka in concern. What's wrong, Kiba? Hinata's at my house, Kiba said. She showed up a few hours after Naruto left. She was nursing a split lip and a hell of a black eye, and refuses to tell how she got them, but she also made it clear that right now she doesn't want to go back to her place, and even if she did, I wouldn't let her until I got to the bottom of it. Naruto cleared his throat. Kiba, you and I will go sort this out here in a bit. But let's focus on the task at hand, and get started on the roof. That should let our tempers cool a little. Won't do any good to barge into the Hyuga estate all hot under the collar, will it? Kiba nodded and picked up a hammer. Naruto grinned. Okay. Here's what we're gonna do. Naruto explained the process and assigned tasks, and each turned to it with relish. They raised the ridgepoles and pegged them into place on the wall, one at each end, and then lifted the ridge beam into place on top of them and secured it. The ridge beam would run along the center of the roof, and to it, the other roofing joists would be nailed. Tenten and Sakura cut the joists and Kiba and Shino hoisted them up to Naruto and his shadow clones, who set them in the notches and nailed them in place. After that, they nailed in the rafters and completed the framing of the roof. They took a break for lunch, and Naruto looked at all the cut-off parts of the logs they'd cut for framing and building the rest of the house. Those are gonna be my roof. He went over with a wedge, maul, and a froe to start working on them. He split the logs into sections with the wedge and maul, and then took the froe and the maul, and split each section into shingles. Tenten joined him with a second maul and froe, and they split shingles while the rest ate. After everyone finished, each grabbed a hammer and a stack of shingles and made their way up to the roof. We'll start at the bottom of the roof, and work our way up to the ridge beam. He laid a shingle down and tacked it into place. The others began, and the roof began to take on a proper look. By mid-afternoon they had both sides of the roof done, and called it a day. Naruto intended to pick up a few extra supplies from town and do the flooring himself. Sasuke had found a good deposit of slate just up the mountain that would make excellent flooring. Naruto had also found a small spring nearby, and planned to use some of the slate to make a canal to bring the water to his cabin. Naruto dusted his hands off and posted a shadow clone for a guard before the group went back into town. Naruto and Kiba had business to attend to. Sure enough, Hinata was at Kiba's house, and just like he'd said, her lip was puffy and her right eye was sporting a vivid shiner. The complication to Naruto's original plan of trying to get her to explain what happened was that right out front of the house was her father, Hyuga clan head Hiashi, arguing with Inuzuka Sume. Hiashi saw Naruto and turned. And there is the cause of all this. How dare you associate with my daughter? Even though she is weak, she is still the heiress of the Hyuga, and shouldn't be found in the presence of such filth. Naruto froze, and decided that anger wasn't going to solve the problem. He steeled himself and adopted his poker face. Hyuga-sama, perhaps you might be interested in knowing what, specifically, your eldest daughter has been doing, and with whom. What have you done to her? Asked the man, completely misinterpreting the question posed by Naruto. He strode forward and grabbed Naruto by the front of his jacket. Naruto slid out of his jacket and left it in Hiashi's hands. Then he lost his temper. I haven't done a damn thing to her. She's been with not only me and Kiba, but also the heirs of the Uchiha and Aburame clans, Haruno Sakura, and Ikegata Tenten, helping me build a house on my new property. And where the hell do you get off, accusing me of mistreating that girl, when she shows up at her teammate's house with a black eye and a split lip? Naruto continued in his rant, until Sakura pulled Naruto's Parker out of the case where it lay on the ground and fired both barrels into the air. Shut up, Sakura yelled as everyone whipped around to face her. Now, I'm sure that there's a reasonable explanation for all of this. Hinata, will you tell us what happened? Hinata looked up at her dad from where she cowered behind Kuromaru, Sume's dog. After I got home, and father discovered that I'd been with Naruto and the others, he lectured me for an hour and sent me to my room. I was halfway to my room when Neji found me. He'd heard the entire lecture. He's the one who gave me the black eye. Her father's reaction was unexpected. Well, daughter, if you are still too weak to have punished him yourself, even to make the seals, then you have received what you deserve. Be back at the house before sunset. He turned and began to walk away. Naruto nearly flipped at that. Kiba held him back, but released him when Naruto bit his hand. Hiashi. The Hyuga paused. Naruto continued, venom in his voice and murder in his eyes. I want everyone to hear this, especially you. Hinata is welcome in my home anytime she wishes, and while on my land has my full protection. But she's the only one from your clan who has that privilege. If I find any other Hyuga on my land, I'll send their eyes back to you in a box and feed the rest to the wolves. Hiashi scoffed and walked away. By sunset, daughter. Naruto picked up his supplies, which mostly consisted of food, and a potbelly wood stove, and packed it up the mountain to his cabin. The next day he went to the deposit that Sasuke had found and quarried out enough slate to floor his cabin and build a hearth for his wood stove. Naruto unsealed his furniture and some rugs for his floor. He'd posted a sign at the head of the trail to his cabin warning any Hyuga that came to it that the trail was part of his property, and trespassing would be dealt with severely. As he sat there, contemplating how he was going to pay for glass to go in his cabin window, he saw someone walk up to his sign. Naruto looked closer and saw that it was a Hyuga. Naruto sent one of his shadow clones to greet the man. Morning, said the clone. What's your business here? The boss is kinda busy. The Hyuga just smirked, dispatched the clone with a Jiyuken strike and stepped onto the path. He saw a puff of smoke from the cabin, and suddenly felt himself thrown backwards onto the path before everything went black. The branch house Hyugas who were standing guard saw the pair of shadow clones walk up the road toward their post, a limp form between them. The two clones of Naruto dumped the unconscious interloper at the guard's feet. His eyes were covered by a bandage made of his Hittite. Naruto had shot into a tree right next to his head with the sharps, and it sprayed wood chips and bark into his eyes. One clone looked the guards in the eye. This is Hiashi's freebie. He'll recover fine, just got some splinters. Next time Hiashi gets a pair of eyes, and the wolves get a free meal. The clones dispelled. Naruto opened a can of beans and set them on his wood stove. He then went outside and started to train, his rifle never far from his hand. After his workout and a quick bath in the tank he'd made to collect water from the canal he'd dug to the spring, Naruto posted a pair of cage bunshin with orders to shoot any Hyuga who stepped onto his property if they weren't Hinata, and went down the mountain and into town. Naruto strolled into the village and into a couple of shops, then went into the Yamanaka florist shop. Ino was behind the counter. Naruto, what brings you in here? Naruto smirked a little. I need a couple things that you sell here. Flowers for someone, among other things. Do you stock vegetable seeds here, too? A few kinds. Why? Figured I'd try my hand at growing my own veggies. Ino indicated a rack of seed bins in a corner. That's all we have as far as vegetables go, that and some potatoes and onions in the nursery. Naruto walked over and measured out a pound each of corn, lettuce, and beans, then walked back over to the counter. I also need some of your potatoes and onions. And a bouquet for a girl. Ino returned from the nursery with the vegetables and then looked at Naruto. Ooh, who's the girl, and what's the occasion? Oh, and do you want it delivered by us, or do you want to give it to her yourself? Well, the girl is Ikegata Tenten. The girl whose family runs that weapons store. The very same. We've been an item for a bit now. She gave me these as an anniversary gift. Naruto laid a Nazmuma and Kaminari on the counter. Made him with her own two hands and gave them to me, and I gave her that belt she wears nowadays. You're the one who gave her that belt. Good lord, Naruto, what did you do? Skin a bear and stitch the leather together with dental floss. And who did the tooling on it? A blind man. That thing looks atrocious. It was a deer, actually, stitched with rawhide, and I was one who tooled it. Tenten said she liked it, though. Naruto deadpanned. Listen, Ino, if I tell you what the occasion for me to buy this bouquet is, you have to swear to me you will tell no one. I don't want this to get out before the opportune moment. Tell no one, Ino. Naruto waited for her to nod, and then leaned in and whispered in her ear. Ino smiled. I've got just the thing. When should she get it? After the last round of the finals. I'll see to it myself. Naruto paid and then turned to walk out. But before he went, He turned back to Ino. Ino, just remember something, as a sort of incentive to keep quiet about what I told you. If you can keep this under your hat until it's all said and done, I'll let you be the first one to know how it turns out, and you can spread that word around. Deal. Ino beamed. Deal. Naruto walked out of the florist shop and gave his garden stuff to a cage bunshin, to take back to the cabin. Now to find a training ground and get ready to destroy Neji in the finals. Naruto woke up on the day of the finals, stoked up the fire in his wood stove and poured a cup of coffee. He pulled on his clothes and belted on his pistols. In the previous weeks he'd made a set of holsters for his flintlocks, and he now carried them holstered at his sides, just behind his Schofield and Peacemaker. Naruto sealed his other pistols into a storage scroll, and slung his Henry, his Sharps, and his Parker across his back, sheathed his Bowie in his right boot, and slid his tomahawks into his belt. He dusted off his slouch hat and pulled it on. As he walked out of the door, he passed the garden he'd planted next to the water tank, and smiled at the corn he saw sprouting. He'd had no trouble with the Hyuga after he'd barked the first one with his Sharps. Apparently Hiashi decided to just leave him be. Naruto whistled a tune as he strode boldly down the hill toward the arena. The stands were packed when Naruto arrived. He looked up and saw Ino sitting in the stands. She winked at him and smiled. He smiled back. Naruto took up his position in the lineup and waited until his name was called to fight. He smiled as he looked at Neji. Good luck, Neji. You'll need it. Neji sneered. I need no luck, Uzumaki. Fate has decreed that I will be the winner. Why not give up now, and save yourself the pain? What can I say? I'm a glutton for punishment. And besides, I owe you for something. What? Your fealty? No, actually I owe you this. Naruto darted in to belt Neji in the mouth, but was blocked and repulsed, after Neji landed 2 solid hits to his arm. Naruto snarled. What kind of family beats on their own kin? Tell me that, Neji. Give me one good reason why you gave your own cousin, a girl, no less, a fat lip and a shiner. Because she is weak, and she associates with weak people. Because fate made her so, and because she's idiotic enough to try and fight it. Neji rushed in, launching a withering series of Jiyuken strikes, most of which landed, and those primarily on Naruto's torso. As Naruto fell, Neji laughed. Once a dead last loser, always a dead last loser. You'll never be anything more than what you are right now, Uzumaki. Give up. Naruto rose back to his feet and drew his tomahawks. Neji, you really think that fate plays a part in everything that happens? Bull. We make our own destinies, our own decisions. Look at you. I heard from Tenten that your branch house. You're bound to serve the main house, forever bow and scrape. Yet at the same time you're better at the Jiyuken than any 10 main house Hyuga. You're struggling to be better than what you are, and you're winning. You're the one who's fighting fate, Neji. Neji leapt in and struck Naruto with a vicious Jiyuken strike to the chest. The cage bunshin dispelled in a cloud of smoke and 10 more rushed in with tomahawks drawn. Neji, rather than waste time trying to find the real Naruto, simply began to spin in place, emitting chakra until it formed a whirling dome all about him. The cage bunshin hit the barrier and ricocheted off, dispelling as they did. The real Naruto landed in a heap. Why do you keep fighting, Uzumaki? Why do you keep trying to change your stars? Because, it's what I do, the impossible. Naruto was fading, seeing double. He staggered to his feet and drew the Schofield. He walked over to where Genma stood, opened the cylinder and ejected all the rounds. He picked up a single round and held it up. See this, Neji? This is 1 bullet. I'm gonna put it in my revolver here, and we're going to test your theory. If I'm fated to lose, it won't matter how I do it, will it? He loaded 1 chamber. Ref, watch this, so you can prove there's no funny business. Naruto closed the action on his revolver and spun the cylinder. There are 6 chambers in this pistol, and only 1 has a live round. A 1 in 6 chance of dying. Naruto brought the muzzle of the pistol up to his temple and cocked it. He pulled the trigger. Click. Neji stood in awe at the fool's antics. That proves nothing, Uzumaki, only that you don't care to die. Naruto grinned and drew his peacemaker. He put it on half-cock and opened the loading gate. Ref, check it. How many cylinders, and how many are loaded? Genma rotated the cylinder and counted. 6 chambers. 5 loaded. Naruto took the pistol back, closed the loading gate and spun the cylinder before cocking it and putting the gun to his head. 1 in 6 chance, Neji. Naruto pulled the trigger. Click. Naruto holstered both pistols and drew his Henry. Naruto opened fire, running forward as he did. Neji erupted off the mark and slammed into Naruto. Naruto blocked with his rifle, and finally shoved Neji off. The Hyuga smirked. You are within my field of divination. He vanished, reappearing in front of Naruto, his arms a blur. Hake Rokujiyuyansho. 2 hands, 4 hands, 8 hands, 16 hands, 32 hands, 64 hands. The last blows launched Naruto back. It's over, referee. He won't get back up. He turned. The Hyuga clan's Kekkei Genkei, the Byakugan, gives the Hyuga an almost infallible defense, for it grants a 359-degree field of vision. But not 360. That meant that for the briefest of moments, Neji lost sight of Naruto where he lay upon the ground. It was to his dismay that he did. He never saw Naruto's hand lift the flintlock pistol and fire. Neji fell, clutching his leg where the 50 caliber bullet shattered it. Naruto once again staggered to his feet, walked to where Neji lay, and looked down at him. Neji, I think you lose. How are you even able to move? I'm stubborn like that, I guess, Naruto said as the Kyuubi flooded his system with demonic chakra to force the Tenketsu Neji's attacks had closed to open again. I'm hard to keep down. Oh, by the way, I still owe you. Naruto picked Neji up by the shirt, and belted him in the mouth, busting his lip against his teeth. Then Naruto slugged him in the eye and let him drop. Genma stepped in and raised Naruto's arm. Winner, Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto walked back to the stands. He checked his pistol loads, and what he saw stopped him mid-step. In each pistol was a round with the primer dented from the hammer striking it. When Naruto had pulled the trigger, it had been on loaded chambers both times, and both rounds were duds. Naruto broke out in a sweat at that and decided to not tell anyone about it. He changed the loads out and holstered them. He'd reload lightning when he got back to the stands. The next match began, and ended, and the one after that. Finally, it came time for Sasuke's match. He was slated to fight the Sangenin, Sabaku no Gaara. Gaara had, Naruto found out, messed Lee up so badly in their match that the doctors predicted he'd never be a ninja again. Naruto wasn't so sure, especially with Lee, whose whole reason for living was to prove his worth as a ninja. Naruto now watched as the two fighters, Gaara and Sasuke, squared off. At the start, Sasuke rocketed off the mark. Damn, he's gotten fast. Sasuke's attack was apparently not fast enough to make it past Gaara's sand shield. It rose up in the blink of an eye, and Sasuke found his arm sinking into the sand. He quickly tore himself free, and put distance between himself and the Sunanin. Kid, something about that sand kid seems familiar, it couldn't be. I don't know him from Adams off Ox, Kyuubi. Kid, he's like us. He's a demon container, same as you. And judging by the sand, I'd bet money he's jailer to the Aikibi no Shukaku. Go talk to him after the match. Something doesn't smell right here. Naruto nodded and continued to watch as Sasuke and Gaara destroyed the arena in their quest to defeat each other. Gaara's sand tore strips up and smashed craters into the ground, and Sasuke's fire jutsu had littered the arena with shattered pieces of glass. Sasuke was steadily chipping away at the Sunagenin's supposedly impenetrable defense. Finally, Gaara retreated into a ball of sand, and Sasuke unveiled his new ace in the hole. Up the wall of the arena he went, gathering chakra into his hand as he ran. At the peak, he turned and started back down. The chakra in his hand was so concentrated that it had become visible, and was brightly glowing, crackling like lightning and emitting chirping sounds like a flock of birds. Ah, so Kakashi taught him that move, remarked Guy from nearby. What move is that, Maida-sensei? Asked Naruto. The only technique in Hatake Kakashi's arsenal that's original, that he didn't copy off of someone else. The user gathers chakra into their hand until it becomes visible. It's said that he once cut a lightning bolt in half with it, giving it its name, the Reikiri, lighting cutter. But most call it by another name, for the chirping sound it makes. Chidori, 1000 birds. Naruto turned and looked to the arena as Sasuke came down the wall, rocketing across the arena floor, until he came to the sphere of sand and buried his arm up to the shoulder in it. The arena went silent. Naruto would swear later that in that moment, he could have heard a pin drop. The silence was shattered by a feral howl of pain and rage from within the sand ball, and Sasuke leapt back to avoid a beastly arm made entirely of sand that snaked out of it. There, inside the ball, glowed a single yellow eye. In that moment, all hell broke loose. The other members of the sand team leapt into the arena, and grabbed Gaara as his sand slithered back into the gourd on his back and he collapsed. They leapt away, Sasuke in pursuit, as a genjutsu cast by infiltrators disguised as Anbu knocked all but a very few of the people in attendance out. Naruto felt drowsy, and nearly fell asleep before the Kyuubi flooded his system with chakra and dispelled the illusion. Naruto looked up just in time to see a ninja with a sound headband leap at him. Naruto sidestepped and cut him down with a tomahawk, then turned to find his friends in the same predicament. Sand and Sound Ninja were all throughout the stands, fighting with Konoha Ninja and anyone else who stood in their way. Naruto drew his revolvers and started to work his way toward where he'd last seen Tenten. She'd won her match, beating Nara Shikamaru of Konoha Team 10. Naruto found her now, pistol drawn and bucking as she held off a trio of sand ninja from the door of the infirmary where the injured lay. Naruto fired swiftly, dispatching the trio and moved to Tenten's side. Are you alright? I'm fine, Naruto. What's going on? What's happening? I'm pretty sure we're being invaded, Tenten. Come on, let's get the folks in here to the shelters. He turned to go inside, but was stopped at the door by Hyuga Neji. The boy's leg was bandaged and splinted, and he looked like he was in unimaginable pain, but he was on his feet. I can still fight, Naruto, and so can the medics. I'll take the wounded and evacuate them. You and Tenten go and help somewhere else. Naruto nodded, then he and Tenten took off for the fray. They found Kakashi, Shikamaru, Sakura, and Kiba backed into a corner. Akamaru was standing over the body of a sound ninja who'd underestimated the little dog. Kakashi waved them over. Sasuke is in pursuit of the sand team. Naruto, you, Tenten, Kiba, Sakura, and Shikamaru are to find him, and bring him back. Shikamaru, you're in charge. Sakura's second in command. Go. The Junin smashed a hole in the wall and the team bailed out of it, headed into the forest. Kiba set Akamaru down on the ground and looked at him. Do your thing, Akamaru. The dog began to sniff, and the others followed. They had followed Akamaru for almost 5 minutes when the little dog whined. Kiba fell back from where he was shadowing the pup and spoke to the others. We're being followed. At least 5, by the smell of them. What do we do, guys? Shikamaru looked at the others. One of us has to stay behind and stall them. They're probably Chunin level or better. It's a suicide mission. The others' faces fell. I'll do it. I'm the only logical choice. Naruto and Tenten are fighters, and you'll probably need them when you catch up with Sasuke. Kiba's the only one who understands Akamaru, and if he dies, we have no tracker. It's either Sakura or me, and I'm kind of a gentleman, troublesome as that may be. So I'll do it. Now go. With that, the Nara darted into the brush and the others continued on. The team arrived in the clearing as Sasuke launched his first attack. Kiba and Akamaru healed off to deal with one of Gaara's teammates, a makeup-wearing boy who was unwrapping a puppet. Sakura and Tenten paired up to fight against the other Sand Nin, a blonde-haired fan user named Tamari, who'd lost to Neji in the prelims. Naruto cocked his revolvers and leapt into the fray to help Sasuke. Sasuke's attack was repulsed, and Gaara was looking less and less human by the moment. He was broken out of his fixation on Sasuke by a brace of bullets slamming into his sand-covered side. Sasuke. Are you alright? I'm fine, Naruto. This is my fight. Back off, the Uchiha snapped. He stood and assumed a fighting stance. Fine. Naruto wheeled and fired his Schofield at the puppeteer, clipping him in the hand and giving Kiba an opening for an all-fours that had to have broken some ribs on the Sunanin. The boy fell back and twitched his fingers, and his puppet turned and fired a dart that hit Kiba in the neck. He collapsed. Naruto moved to help Kiba but was halted by the dog boy's voice calling out. No, Naruto. I've got this. The boy stood again, as did Kiba. Naruto took his place by Kiba's side. Blood brothers, Kiba. Your fights are my fights. Naruto reloaded the spent chambers in his revolvers and looked at Kiba. Besides, Kiba, you don't know what was in that dart. You could be poisoned pretty badly. The sand boy smiled. Oh, he's more than just poisoned. That's my own special blend. He'll be dead inside an hour. Naruto and Kiba launched off their respective marks, Kiba circling to the left and around the puppet, who was by this point engaged with Akamaru, and Naruto coming from the right. Naruto fired his revolvers, aiming for the Sunanin's hands. The puppeteer moved back, and then dodged entirely as Kiba assaulted him. His concentration broken by Naruto and Kiba's attack, the Sand Nin broke the chakra string connection to his puppet, and Akamaru came for him as the puppet fell lifeless. Kiba tackled the Sand Genin and held him. Antidote. Now. Akamaru sniffed the boy and nosed his pocket. Naruto reached into the pocket and pulled out a vial. Kiba pulled the cork with his teeth and drank the whole vial down, before passing out. The sand boy smiled again. He'll still be out of the fight. The antidote's got a nasty side effect. He'll be unconscious for the next few hours, and by then, the leaf will be burned to the ground. Naruto kicked him in the head and knocked him out. Naruto fed Akamaru a soldier pill from Kiba's pocket and pointed to the edge of the clearing. Akamaru, get Kiba out of here. The pup, invigorated by the stimulant, grabbed Kiba's jacket collar in his jaws and dragged him off the battlefield. Naruto holstered his now empty revolvers and drew Inazuma and Kaminari. He was about to turn when he heard Tenten and Sakura scream. Naruto whirled and saw Gaara, now almost completely covered in sand in the shape of the Shukaku, throw Sasuke back one-handed. The sand boy's other hand was occupied holding Tenten and Sakura to the trunk of a tree, and slowly crushing them. Naruto fired both flintlocks and discovered that the heavy 50 caliber bullets had little to no effect except to further enrage the beast. Naruto hauled Sasuke to his feet and looked to the Uchiha as he reloaded. Sasuke, don't say a damn thing. We need to do something, so here's the plan. Naruto quickly briefed Sasuke on the plan and they erupted into action. Sasuke would launch fire jutsu and melt parts of the sand into glass, and Naruto would shoot through the glass into the weakened shield, in hopes to get through. They kept this up for a minute or so, but were stopped in their tracks by the sight of all the sand, lest the hand that still held the girls, coalescing into a giant tanuki of sand, with the bare torso of Sabaku no Gaara sticking out of the forehead. Gaara began performing hand signs, then slumped over asleep. The tanuki looked around, and then roared. I'm free. Shit. He gave up control to the Shukaku. Naruto bit his thumb and poured as much chakra as he could into Akuchio's no jutsu. In a blast of smoke appeared a huge storm gray stallion, so tall he towered over the trees of Konoha's forest. He wore no saddle pad like the other horses Naruto had summoned. On his forehead was a white mark in the shape of the kanji for, above. I am Sleipnir, boss of the horses. Are you the one who calls me to battle, little one? I am, Sleipnir. If we don't stop the Shukaku, then my entire village will be destroyed, and the girl I love will die. Then we fight. Jump up and hold on. Naruto jumped up onto Sleipnir and the horse charged. Naruto made his way up onto the peak of the horse boss's head, and grabbed a handful of mane to hold on as Sleipnir reared and pawed at Shukaku. The two great beasts fought, biting and tearing, pawing and kicking, leveling huge swaths of forest. The Tanuki demon launched bullets of air, trying to bring down Sleipnir, and the horse responded with lightning, which had no effect, being grounded out by the sand. So again the two beasts clashed, coming to grips in a blur of motion and a thunderclap of sound. Naruto yelled above the din of the battle, screaming in Sleipnir's ear. What do we do? The Shukaku's in total control, he has been ever since Gaara went to sleep. Then let's wake him up, cried Sleipnir. Naruto dispatched a Kage Bunshin to find Sasuke and bring him aboard. Naruto quickly outlined a plan, and Sasuke, after pointing out a few of the flaws and helping Naruto fix them, agreed. Naruto tensed, and then as Sleipnir leapt at the Shukaku, Naruto performed a henge on the horse boss. From the smoke emerged the Kyuubi no Kitsune, which latched onto the Tanuki and held him fast. Naruto and Sasuke had leapt as high as they could, and as they reached the peaks of their jumps, each began his own hand signs. Naruto performed his signature jutsu, the Taju Kage Bunshin, and created over 500 clones, all of whom drew a sharps and took aim. Sasuke completed his signs and inhaled deeply. Kaden, Gukaku no Jutsu, roared Sasuke as he released the massive fireball upon the Shukaku, melting the sand all along its back and neck to glass. Naruto and his clones all drew down and fired, reloading as they dropped and firing again. The Shukaku howled in pain as the bullets struck him, and Naruto landed on the Tanuki's nose. He ran up the demon's face, leapt, reversing his sharps in his hands to grip it by the barrel, and swung the rifle like a bat, cracking the sleeping sand ninja across the head with it. The boy's eyes shot open and the sand Tanuki dissolved back into loose sand, as did the hand around the girl's. Sleipnir vanished in a puff of smoke, and Temari hobbled up, her arm bandaged from a sword cut, holding her other teammate. Naruto held his shotgun steady. There's been enough killing today. Gaara, take your team and ride out. We won't follow. But if you ever attack Konoha again, Ikibi Container, you, me, and my tenant, who has a few more tails than yours, are going to have more than words. Gaara was stunned. You have a demon, how are you not like me? Naruto smiled sardonically. How? I have people who love me. I have a dream. I have a couldn't care less attitude. Take your pick. Gaara frowned. My own uncle tried to kill me. He died in the attempt. I lived my life for myself. Killing was my purpose, my reason to live. I'll see if I can find something else to live for now, shootist. Gaara turned and walked away. As the sand team faded into the distance, Naruto turned and saw Tenten. She was lying on the ground at the base of the tree. She was very pale, and unmoving. Naruto ran to her. Tenten, are you alright? He received no response. Sakura was coming to nearby. Naruto picked Tenten up in his arms. Tenten, please. This isn't funny. Wake up. Tenten, please, please. Naruto was beginning to panic as he held Tenten. She was limp, unresponsive. Naruto was sure she was dead. Nah, Naruto, Tenten said weakly. She moved a little, and winced. I think my ribs are broken. Naruto picked her up gently, and Sasuke shouldered Sakura. As they were headed out of the clearing, Kakashi arrived with Shikamaru and Akamaru in tow. I came as soon as I could, Naruto. What happened here? Asked Kakashi. The boy, Gaara, he wasn't himself for a while. We handled it, and he and his team are no longer a threat. They're on their way back to Wind Country. Where's Kiba? He's at the hospital. Akamaru followed us. Inuzuka Hana said he was saying something about Kiba's blood brother needing help. Kakashi looked at Naruto. Any idea what he meant? I'll explain later, Kakashi-sensei. For now, let's get back to the village, Naruto responded. He set off at the fastest run he could manage in his chakra-depleted state. He was still moving pretty fast. All his training had paid off, but he was nowhere near as fast as he would have been if he hadn't used most of his chakra in battle. As they ran back to the village, Kakashi briefed them on what had happened. He explained that Orochimaru had revealed himself as the leader of Hidden Sound, and a coalition between Sound and Sand had invaded. There was a barrier jutsu in place atop the Hokage Tower, and inside the barrier, the Hokage and Orochimaru were fighting. The civilians had been evacuated, and the counter-offensive was gaining headway. It looked like the Sound and Sand would be driven out of Konoha before nightfall. As they ran, Kakashi's radio chirped. He listened as someone spoke to him through the earpiece, then took off as fast as he could, leaving the genin behind. Naruto swore, bit his thumb, and summoned some horses. We need a ride. No time to explain. They mounted up and galloped to the village. When they arrived in the village, Kakashi was standing outside the hospital. Naruto ran up to him as a nurse took Tenten. What happened, Kakashi-sensei? Why'd you take off so fast? The Junin looked up, and his visible eye was red with crying. Naruto, the Hokage defeated Orochimaru. He couldn't kill him, but he managed to seal part of his soul. But, Naruto, the Hokage's not got long to live. They're giving him another hour, at most. Any other words Kakashi might have said were lost as Naruto darted into the hospital and up to the Hokage's room. The doctor outside the room tried to stop him, and Naruto just ran him over. There in the bed lay the Hokage, frail and weakened by his battle with Orochimaru. Ji-san. Naruto edged closer to the bed. Ji-san, I'm sorry I couldn't have been there to help you, but I was fighting with Gaara. The old man opened his eyes and looked at Naruto. Naruto, you did what you had to do. I doubt that there was any alternative. Naruto, I want you to know that you've always been like a grandson to me, and if you ever need anything, the Sarutobi clan will do its best to help you. Naruto was by this point in tears. You were like the granddad I never had, Hokage-sama, he sobbed. Naruto, I know you vowed to become Hokage one day, and I expect you will. But I don't think you're ready just yet. When you do become Hokage, lead this village well, Naruto. The old man closed his eyes and drifted off to sleep. Naruto walked out of the room, and down to where Kakashi stood with Sarutobi Asuma, Team 10 Sensei and the Hokage's son. Naruto walked up to Asuma and put a hand on his shoulder. Asuma-sensei, I don't know what to say. I lost the man who was like a dad to me, so I know how it feels, but I still don't know what to say. Asuma looked at Naruto, tears in his eyes, and hugged him. Asuma-sensei, could I bum a cigarette? Naruto asked when they parted. I figure this is as good a time as any to start. Asuma passed him a cigarette and his lighter, and Naruto lit up, coughing when he took his first draw. Naruto, thank you. It was kind of you to try and comfort me. I appreciate it. Asuma would have continued had the doctor not stepped outside, his countenance grim, and said, he's gone. The Hokage's funeral was sad, with many people of all ages and ranks recounting how in some way he'd touched their lives. Naruto was the last to speak. He stood in front of the crowd and told of how when he'd had a bad day, how a word from the Hokage would always cheer him up. He told of how until his death, the Sandaime Hokage had been the grandfather that he'd never had. Naruto laid a single white flower in front of the Hokage's photograph, along with a single spent cartridge casing. After the funeral, Naruto went to the hospital to check up on Tenten. Just like she'd said, her ribs were broken, but luckily that was the only injury she sustained from Gaara's attack. Naruto had visited her every day, bringing flowers and candies, and playing his guitar for her and the two kunoichi who shared a room with her. Naruto didn't even bother acting as he went through the halls and up to Tenten's door. He knocked, and then entered. Tenten was sitting up in bed, sipping a cup of tea. Hi, Ten-chan. He sat down on the edge of her bed. She held his hand. I heard your speech. They broadcast the funeral so we could hear it in here. You don't have to play today if you don't want to. Naruto just unsealed his guitar and smiled a little. Thanks. Right now I just want to sit here and grieve. Tenten squeezed his hand. I know, Naru-kun. I know. After an hour or so, Naruto stood. Tenten, I have to go, I've got some things I need to do. Tenten smiled at him and wished him well, as did Yuki and Tasuki, the twin Chunin who shared a hospital room with her. Naruto left with his mind set on one purpose. Naruto's first stop was his cabin. He checked his garden on the way into the house. He'd finally gotten glass in the windows. Naruto now pulled the scroll containing his most valuable things out from beneath his bed and counted out his money. Aside from mission pay, and what was left of the bounty from Zabuza, Naruto had made a little extra money by selling the furs from some of his hunting trips to a furrier in the village. This Naruto took now, and made his way into town. Along the way he ran into Kiba and Hinata. Kiba had finally been backed into a corner and forced to admit to Hinata that he was in love with her, and she'd faced up to the fact that Naruto was in love with Tenten. They'd been dating for almost a week, ever since the attack by Sound and Sand. Kiba ran up to Naruto and slapped him on the back. Naruto, how've you been, man? I haven't seen you in a while. I've seen better days, Kiba. I'm on my way to do some very important shopping right at the moment, though, and if things turn out the way I hope they do, then I'll be back on the road to better days in no time. Naruto darted off, leaving a fairly confused Kiba and a blushing Hinata behind him. Hinata, I think Naruto's going to go get drunk. Hinata giggled and smacked him on the arm. No, silly, he's going to buy jewelry. Kiba looked at her like she'd grown a second head. Think about it, Kiba-kun. Hinata walked off toward her favorite ice cream shop, leaving Kiba, more confused than ever, standing in the middle of the road. Naruto made his purchases and was on his way back to the hospital when he was stopped by Kakashi. Naruto, you're needed in the council chambers right away. It's about a mission. Naruto quickly sealed his things away into a scroll and followed Kakashi to the council chambers. Once there, he recognized the old pervert from the hot springs, along with the late Hokage's former teammates and advisors. Naruto walked up to the old pervert. Good to see you again, Ero Sennin. He sidestepped the half-hearted bop on the head that Jiraiya tried to give him. Naruto then addressed the two others. Kakashi-sensei said this was about a mission. One of the two stepped forward. The Sandaime Hokage failed to name a successor to become the Godime. We had attempted to convince his former student, Jiraiya the Toad Sage, to take up the position. At this point, Jiraiya interrupted. And I told them that that idea was for the birds. I'm not cut out to take care of an entire hidden village. Hell, there are those who wonder if I'm even able to take care of myself. Naruto was confused. And this concerns me how? Because I know you aren't going to name me the Godime. Jiraiya continued. I do know someone, however, who would make an excellent Hokage. My old teammate, Tsunade. Our mission is to find her and bring her back. Naruto looked at the old man. Our mission, as in, you and me. What? You have a problem with that? No, not at all, but you'd best be ready to travel fast. I'm always ready, brat. Good. Give me an hour to settle up affairs. I'll be at the main gate. Naruto turned and left to pack his warbag and asked Kiba and Hinata to keep an eye on his place. They met at the gate and departed. As they walked, Naruto turned to Jiraiya. So, what's Tsunade like? If we want to find her, I need to know so I know where to look. She's a compulsive gambler and an alcoholic. She also used to be a gifted medic, until she gave it up and left the village. So we look in bars and gambling dens. Nearest place with either of those is Yumi, and after that Tanzaku guy. Let's go, said Naruto. He sped up a little and Jiraiya sped up to keep pace with him. Whoa, slow down, brat. Why the hurry? Well, if we hurry, then we get done faster, and get back to the village faster. The faster we get back, the sooner I can. Naruto cut himself off. I've got business back in the village that this mission interrupted. This might take a while, Naruto. Tsunade's not got the best of luck when it comes to gambling. She's actually so bad that her nickname is, the legendary sucker. She's gotten really good at hiding from dodging all the people she owes money to. But look on the bright side, You're on a mission with one of the legendary Densetsu no Sannin, who happens to be a perverted old geezer. Naruto sped up again, until he came to the outskirts of Yumi. Once there, he paid a visit to the number 10 bar, and asked if anyone matching Jiraiya's description of Tsunade had been in. The bartender mentioned that a girl who matched that description had been through a week or so prior, and was headed to Tanzaku-gai for a poker tournament there. Naruto grabbed Jiraiya and dragged him out of the bar before he had a chance to start making an ass of himself with the women, and they headed toward Tanzaku-gai. That night they bedded down along the road and Naruto took first watch. While he sat on watch, Naruto looked at a map of Tanzaku-gai and formulated a plan of how to go about looking for Tsunade. He marked out which bars he was most likely to find her in, based on the proximity to the casino where the tournament was being held. Naruto was relieved around midnight and lay down to rest. The following day, as the two walked toward Tanzaku-gai, Naruto looked over at Jiraiya. So, you were really the Yondaime Hokage's Junin sensei? I was. Crazy kid, him. He ended up teaching me a few things, as it turned out. How do you think I got to be so good at hiding while I do research? Really? What else did he teach you? The old geezer reached into his bag and pulled out a balloon, which he filled with water and tied off. Here, pop this. He tossed it to Naruto, who took it in hand and crushed it. Jiraiya frowned. No, not like that. Use your chakra to spin the water inside the balloon and pop it. Naruto looked at him as if he were crazy. Okay. Why? Jiraiya just smiled. That's the first step in learning one of the Yondaime's signature jutsus, the Rasengan. Naruto's eyes lit up. Show me. Jiraiya took another balloon and filled it. He held it in his palm. As he focused chakra, the balloon began to stretch as jets of water hit the inside of the rubber. All at once, the balloon burst, spraying water in every direction. Jiraiya wiped his hand on his trousers and filled another balloon, which he tossed to Naruto. Now you try. It took me almost 3 years to master the Rasengan, so don't get yourself down if you don't get it right away. Naruto's response was not to come. The boy was deep in thought, contemplating what he'd seen, and how he could possibly duplicate it. Okay, Kyuubi. I know I have to spin the chakra to bust the balloon. Any tips? If I helped you with everything, would you ever learn on your own? Geez, no need to get snippy, I was just asking. Okay, Naruto, think. If the water was spinning all in one direction, then the balloon would just flatten out like a disc. It was all bumpy when Ero Sennin did it, so it must mean he was, aha. Naruto focused his chakra into the balloon, trying to get several directions of spin at once, and the balloon tore itself to shreds in his hand. Ero Sennin, I got it. What's next? Jiraiya was astounded. How on earth did the kid figure that out so fast? Jiraiya filed it away for later use and produced a hard rubber ball. Okay, brat. The first step was about spin, and the second is about power. Do to this ball what you did to that water balloon. He tossed the ball to Naruto. The ball was in Naruto's hand all of 30 seconds before it exploded. Then, to make sure it wasn't a fluke, Naruto did it to another ball. Jiraiya took out a balloon now, and filled it with air. The last step is trickier. You have to form the Rasengan inside the balloon, without bursting it. Naruto tried, and the balloon popped. He took another balloon from Jiraiya, and tried again, with the same effect. Jiraiya handed him the bag of balloons and patted him on the back. Keep trying, kid, you'll get it eventually. That night as they entered a small roadside town on the way to Tanzaku-gai, Naruto was growing weary. He'd gone through the entire bag of balloons earlier that day, with no luck whatsoever in keeping them from popping when he tried to form the Rasengan. Naruto fingered the pouch sewn into his gunbelt where he kept his money, and decided not to mention it. And it was smart, too, because Jiraiya volunteered to look for Tsunade, right about the same time a pretty girl gave him the bedroom eyes. The old man took off without a word to Naruto about accommodations for the night, so Naruto just assumed that the perverted geezer could take care of himself, and went to a modestly priced hotel, booked a room for two, and ordered tea and a 5:30 wake-up call. He sat down to start his nightly routine of breaking down and cleaning his guns, and oiling and honing his blades. Naruto smiled as he remembered aloud the words that James had spoken so often when they'd sat down to do this. Take care of your tools, Naruto, and you'll never have to worry, because they'll take care of you, mused the boy as he cleaned. He was interrupted in his cleaning by a knock at the door. Who is it? He asked. Room service. I brought your coffee, sir, replied the voice on the other side. Naruto's hair stood up. He remembered that voice. I'll be right there. Let me get dressed first, he responded calmly as he picked up his Schofield, which was still together and loaded. Naruto very quickly reassembled his Parker, and his Peacemaker, and loaded them, gripping the shotgun one-handed and tucking the pistols into his waistband. Naruto stepped up to the door, shouldered the shotgun, and fired both barrels through the thin wooden door. Naruto barely registered the curse of pain from an unfamiliar voice before he kicked what was left of the door down and stepped through, dropping the shotgun, drawing his revolvers, and sighting in on the first threat he saw, which was a colossal blue man with a cloth-wrapped zanbeitu. Naruto punched 3 of his Peacemaker's 5 rounds into the man's chest and wheeled as he went down, searching for his other target. There at the end of the hallway stood Itachi, looking a little older, but no less deadly than he had that day on the trail. Kyuubi container. Come with me, and you won't be harmed, he spoke calmly, disregarding the moans of his partner. You don't recognize me, do you, Uchiha? Naruto snarled as he reloaded. Tell me, do you remember an old man, who people called the shootist? Well, that boy who was with him was me. He passed his title on to me. I'm the new shootist, and I swore I'd kill you. Any last words? Yes, actually. Don't underestimate your opponent. The cage bunshin in front of Naruto vanished and Naruto felt a crushing blow hit him in the back, flinging him forward. Naruto tucked and rolled, coming up with both pistols drawn. Same mistake most everyone makes when they face me, quipped the fox boy dryly as he cocked both pistols. Left eye, or right? I'd like to know which one you'd prefer I put the bullet that kills you through. Itachi. Both wheeled to witness Uchiha Sasuke barreling down the corridor, a Chidori charged and ready in his hand. Naruto fired his pistols at Itachi, forcing him back against the wall, and smoothly ducked as Sasuke leapt over him to attack his brother. Itachi lithely parried the blow into the wall and broke Sasuke's arm before lifting the boy up in front of himself as a hostage. Uzumaki. Come with us or your teammate dies. Naruto calmly ejected the spent cartridges from each of his revolvers and reloaded, then slid a fresh brace of shells into the shotgun. Sasuke. Naruto. You remember that talk we had a few weeks back? The one about mutual enemies. I remember, Naruto. Good. I'd hate having to remind you. Naruto brought the shotgun up and fired from the hip, first one barrel, then the other, taking Itachi off guard. The first barrel was loaded with number 4 birdshot, and tore into Itachi's exposed shoulder, making him release Sasuke. The second barrel was a buck and ball loading of a slug and buckshot that hit Itachi low in the side and crumpled him. He stood painfully and locked eyes with Sasuke, who had drawn a kunai to attack him. Itachi's Sharingan morphed into a different form, and Sasuke collapsed, his breathing shallow and his eyes glazed. Naruto by this point had drawn his revolvers again and advanced on the wounded Uchiha. Behind Naruto, Jiraiya rounded the corner into the corridor and shouted something, but Naruto was focused solely on his revenge. He heard only muffled sounds over the roaring of his own blood in his ears. Itachi grabbed his partner, who appeared to have ceased breathing, and threw a flash bomb. When Naruto's vision returned, they were gone. Naruto holstered his pistols and moved to where Sasuke lay in the corridor. His eyes were glazed, and he kept repeating, "No. Mother. Father," over and over, and crying. Physically, all he had was a broken arm and a few stray shot pellets in his shoulder from Naruto's shotgun blast. Naruto bandaged the wounds and splinted Sasuke's arm as best he could. 10 minutes after Itachi escaped, none other than Maida Guy, Tenten's Junin sensei, erupted around the corner of the hallway and nearly kicked Jiraiya in the head. Guy sensei, I need you to take Sasuke back to Konoha, said Naruto. This mission I'm on with Jiraiya sensei is too important for me to double back myself. Tell them that whatever Itachi did to him, it started when they locked eyes. And, please, Guy sensei, do me 2 favors. Tell Ten-chan not to worry about me, and please remind Yamanaka Ino that she had better not spill the secret I told her, or else. Of course, Naruto, I'll make sure to do it. And if I cannot, I'll run 1,000 laps around Konoha on my hands. And if I fail that, I'll. Guy's voice faded out as he departed. As he left, Naruto seemed to sink inward, and his face, formerly composed, began to darken. Jiraiya, who had been silent the entire time, finally began to speak. You seem to take pretty good control of the situation there, Naruto. You mean after I let a pair of S-ranked criminals escape, and one of my fellow shinobi get seriously injured? The fact that you survived an encounter with those 2 S-ranked criminals, and that your teammate is still alive, should be cause for celebration. If I may ask, Naruto, you seemed like a man on a mission when I came around the corner. I shouted at you but you didn't seem to hear me. What's going on? Naruto and Jiraiya had wandered back into the hotel room, and Naruto was reassembling and reloading his weapons. The gunfighter held up his Henry. You remember the man who used to wield this? The former shootist. Jiraiya nodded. His name was James Butler Hickok, and I met him on my 6th birthday, in Konoha. He saved me from a mob trying to kill me. He talked to the Hokage and then took me with him. I traveled with him for the next 6 years, and he taught me everything I know about weapons, survival, and tracking. On my 12th birthday, 3 weeks before I became a genin, he was called out by a man on the trail back to Konoha, and killed. The man who killed him was Uchiha Itachi. Naruto's face darkened again, not in sorrow, but in barely suppressed rage. His eyes, normally blue, were beginning to redden around the edges. Jiraiya laid a hand on the boy's shoulder. And you swore revenge for Hickok's death. Am I right? Naruto nodded. Well, brat, let's find another hotel to stay at. We can get a fresh start on our mission tomorrow morning. Naruto simply slung his cases across his back and holstered his pistols. I couldn't sleep now if I tried, Ero Sennin. I'm going on ahead. Stay here if you want. I'll meet you in Tanzaku Gai. Naruto leapt out a window, rolled to his feet on landing, and summoned Widowmaker. Naruto pulled his slouch hat low and kicked the stallion in the flanks with his heels, taking off down the road. Back in Konoha, Aikegata Tenten was stretched out in the recliner at her house, reading a book of poetry she'd found buried in the very back of the library. She paused when one caught her attention. The Highwayman, by Alfred Noyes, she read aloud. Sounds interesting. She began to read the poem aloud. The wind was a torrent of darkness. Among the gusty trees. The moon was a ghostly galleon, tossed upon the cloudy seas. The road was a ribbon of moonlight. Over the purple moor. And the highwayman came riding. 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 The highwayman came riding. Up to the old inn door. He'd a French cocked hat on his forehead. A bunch of lace at his chin. A coat of claret velvet. And breeches of brown doeskin. They fitted with never a wrinkle. His boots were up to the thigh. And he rode with a jeweled twinkle. His pistol butts a twinkle. His rapier hilt a twinkle. Under the jeweled sky, over the cobbles he clattered. And clashed in the dark inn yard. He tapped with his whip at the shutters. But all was locked and barred. He whistled a tune to the window. And who should be waiting there? But Bess, the landlord's daughter. The landlord's black-eyed daughter. Plaiting a dark red love knot into her long black hair. One kiss, my bonny sweetheart. For I'm after a prize tonight. But I shall be back with the yellow gold. Before the morning light. But if they press me sharply. And harry me through the day. Look for me by the moonlight. Watch for me by the moonlight. I'll come to thee by the moonlight. Though hell should bar the way. He rose upright in the stirrups. He scarce could reach a hand. She loosed her hair in the casement. His face burnt like a brand, as the black cascade of perfume came tumbling o'er his breast. He kissed its waves in the moonlight. The long dark waves in the moonlight. Then he tugged his rein in the moonlight, and galloped away to the west. He did not come at the dawning. He did not come at noon. The out of the tawny sunset. Before the rise of the moon. When the road was a gypsy's ribbon. Looping the purple moor, a redcoat troop came marching. Marching, marching. King George's men came marching. Up to the old inn door. They said no word to the landlord. They drank his ale instead. They gagged his daughter and bound her to the foot of her narrow bed. And two of them knelt at her casement, with muskets at their side. There was death at every window, and hell at one dark window. For Bess could see through the casement the road that he would ride. They tied her up to attention, with many a sniggering jest. They bound a musket beside her, the barrel beneath her breast. Now keep good watch. And they kissed her. She heard the dead man say, "Look for me by moonlight. Watch for me by moonlight. I'll come to thee by moonlight. Though hell should bar the way." She twisted her hands behind her, but all the knots held good. She writhed her hands till her fingers were wet with sweat or blood. They stretched and strained in the darkness, and the hours crawled by like years, till now on the stroke of midnight. Cold on the stroke of midnight. The tip of one finger touched it. The trigger at least was hers. Tot ill lot, tot ill lot. Had they heard it? The horses' hooves rang clear. Tot ill lot, tot ill lot. In the distance. Were they deaf? They did not hear. Down the ribbon of moonlight, and over the brow of the hill, the highwaymen came riding. Riding. The redcoats looked to their priming. Bess stood up straight and still. Tot ill lot in the frosty silence. Tot ill lot in the echoing night. Nearer he came and nearer. Her face was like a light. Her eyes grew wide for a moment. She drew one last deep breath. Her finger moved in the moonlight. The musket shattered the moonlight. Shattered her breast in the moonlight. And warned him. With her death. Tenten's eyes teared up, and when she cleared them, she read on, silently at first, and then out loud, of the highwayman's hearing how Bess had died. Quote. And his face grew grey to hear. How Bess, the landlord's daughter, the landlord's lovely daughter, had watched for her love in the moonlight, and died in the darkness there. Back he spurred like a madman, shrieking a curse to the sky, the white road smoking behind him, and his rapier brandished high. Blood red were his spurs in the golden noon. Wine red was his velvet coat. They shot him down on the highway. Down like a dog on the highway. And he lay in his blood on the highway. A bunch of lace at his throat. But still on a winter's night they say, when the wind is in the trees, and the moon is a ghostly galleon, tossed upon the cloudy seas, and the road is a ribbon of moonlight, over the purple moor, a highwayman comes riding. 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 A highwayman comes riding. Up to the old inn door. Over the cobbles he clatters, and clashes in the dark inn yard. He taps with his whip at the shutters, but all is locked and barred. He whistles a tune to the window, and who should be waiting there but Bess, the landlord's daughter, the landlord's black-eyed daughter, plaiting a dark red love knot into her long black hair. Tenten closed the book and wiped her eyes. The poem was sad, and it made her miss Naruto. He'd left for a mission outside the village, and it must have been important, because according to Hinata and Kiba he'd barely had time to ask them to take care of his property for him. He hadn't even said goodbye to her. She checked the bandages around her torso, and took another painkiller. As she sat there in the recliner, she fingered the pistol belt Naruto had given her and drifted off to sleep. Naruto leaned low over Widowmaker's neck as the stallion galloped over the road. Tanzaku Gai, ETA 5 minutes, Naruto, shouted the horse over the wind rushing by. Naruto patted the horse's neck by way of reply, and Widowmaker picked up his speed. When they arrived, Naruto dismissed Widowmaker, took off his bandana, and walked into the first bar he saw. It was a ramshackle saloon whose dark-stained and blade-scarred floor and walls indicated that it had aptly earned its name, the Bucket o' Blood. Naruto stood at the bar and slapped two 10 Ryu coins down on the bar. Barkeep. The bartender walked over and nodded his head in acknowledgement. Dirty bird, and leave the bottle. The bartender took the coins and came back with a bottle of wild turkey, a glass, and Naruto's change. Naruto pulled the cork and poured 2 fingers into the highball glass. The first sip of 101 proof whiskey burned like a Kaden jutsu going down, but the next 2 felt fine to Naruto. Naruto had just poured his second glass when a female voice behind him spoke. "Are you even old enough to be drinking, kid?" Naruto turned, his hat low over his eyes, and reined himself in when he came face to face, so to speak, with an enormous pair of breasts. Breasts he recognized from a photo of Jiraiya's. Been legal to drink since October. His voice took on the same drawl that James had spoken with, and a drunken slur. "My ramrod was of a mind that if a body's old enough to kill, and to get killed, then a body's old enough to have him a stout drink. As is, I'm out here a drinkin' and silently toastin' my ramrod's memory, 'cause you see, miss, my ramrod got killed a week or so ago." "That's pretty sad," remarked the woman, who Naruto knew to be blonde and beautiful. "How'd he die?" "Pizen. Got snakebit. My outfit's over yonder ways, a couple days ride." Naruto jerked his thumb over his shoulder, in the general direction of Konoha. "If you work out that way, why are you here?" asked the woman. "Well, it's like this, miss. My outfit, they sent me out this way, to try and track down one of my old ramrod's pards." "And why is it you need to find this friend of your old boss?" "See, my outfit asked one of the old boss's other pals to take over runnin' the outfit. But this pal, he says he's too much a drifter to be put in that position. He says this other pal o' his and the boss's would be pure D perfect for the job, though. So the boys rounded me up, and told me not to come back, lest I find that pal of the boss's." The woman stood next to Naruto, and set a sake bottle on the bar. Naruto slid his glass over to her and took up the bottle. "Miss, I'd like to ask ya a favor. One of the last things the ramrod said to me, 'fore he died, was that if I went to toast his memory, I was to find the prettiest lady in the bar, and get her to toast with me, on account o' the ramrod fancied himself a bit of a ladies' man. If you don't mind, of course." "Why not? I'll do it." Naruto lifted the bottle in salute and spoke clearly, the drawl and any trace of drunkenness gone. "To the memory of Sarutobi Hiruzen, rest in peace, Professor." Naruto pulled his hat off and looked for the first time into Senju Tsunade's stunned eyes. "I guess I found the ramrod's old pard. The council wants you back, Lady Tsunade. They want you to take the mantle of Godime." Naruto pulled his bandana out of his pocket and tied it around his neck, the Hittite plate on it gleaming in the light. Tsunade scowled. "And why should I do that? Huh, tell me. Only idiots willingly take the position of Hokage. I'm not that stupid." She spun on her heel and started toward the door. She was stopped by the whiskey bottle zipping over his shoulder and shattering against the doorframe. She turned around as Naruto stood. His face was feral, and his eyes promised pain to anyone who intruded on his business. "All right, old hag, you listen here. First, becoming Hokage is my dream. I'll admit I ain't the sharpest kunai in the sheath, but Sarutobi Hiruzen wasn't called the professor for nothing, and you'd better remember it." Naruto crossed the floor and got right up in Tsunade's face. "Second, the hell do you know, anyway? The Hokage's supposed to protect and care for the village. Sometimes that means giving your life so others will live. Ji-san gave his life to protect the Konoha, to make sure that Konoha would keep on living. And the Yondaime did the same. And I'd do the same in a heartbeat, if that's what it took." Naruto's temper rose and rose, as did the volume of his voice. He kept on ranting at the Sennin in front of him. Finally Naruto's voice dropped to a low growl, just above a whisper. "I was always told that it's trash who abandon their mission, but it's someone lower than that who abandons their teammates. The Hokage's teammates with everyone in the village, so I guess that makes you something I wouldn't scrape off my boot. I tell you what, you cowardly old bat, I'll turn around, Go back to the bar and finish getting wasted, and I'll let you walk away. When Jiraiya arrives here, I'll tell him that your trail's gone cold and petered out. We'll go back to Konoha. Hidden Leaf will leave you be. But if I ever see you again, send you Tsunade, so help me I'll put a kunai between your eyes without a second thought. Tsunade looked at this angry youth before her and smirked. You're threatening me. You know I'm one of the Densetsu no Sanin, right? Naruto flipped her the bird. I don't give a damn if you're Kami himself, and by the way, that wasn't a threat. That was a promise. You couldn't touch me if you tried, brat. Tsunade picked up a sake bottle from the table next to her and raised it to her lips. The bark of Naruto's Schofield was loud in the tiny barroom, and the bottle in Tsunade's hand shattered in a spray of sake and ceramic. Naruto lost his temper then. That's it. Outside. We're gonna settle this here and now. He holstered his revolver and stormed past Tsunade out into the street. Coming up the road at a run was a panting and sweaty Jiraiya. What's with you, Naruto? We have to find. He stopped and surveyed the situation. Oh, you found her already. Tsunade. We've been looking for why. Shut up, Jiraiya, snapped Tsunade as she cracked her knuckles. Behind her, from another bar, a brunette girl carrying a pig emerged and saw the fight about to take place. These are the terms, brat. You can use any weapons, jutsus, or techniques you feel like. I can only use one finger. She held up her right index finger. If you manage to somehow win, I'll apologize for what I said. But when you lose, you admit I'm right, and leave me alone. Agreed. Jiraiya looked confused. Naruto, what's going on? Shut up, Aro Sennin. Barked Naruto. This old hag needs to learn not to speak disrespectfully of the dead. He looked Tsunade in the eye and then took off his gunbelts and longarm cases. He set them down next to the bar. Now it's a fair fight. Tsunade assumed her stance, and Naruto drew his tomahawks. Ready, they said in unison. Steady, go. Naruto darted forward, winging one tomahawk low and the other high. Tsunade blocked the high one with her finger, and smoothly redirected it back toward Naruto. Naruto dodged the axe and leapt forward, his fist drawn back for a haymaker punch. Tsunade intercepted the blow with just her one finger, and her counter push with the finger sent Naruto sprawling into the dirt several yards away. Naruto stood, and forced his anger down into a little ball down deep inside. He focused his chakra, and as he started forward again, a blue sphere of chakra started to form in his hand. Back in Konoha, Kiba was on a mission. Not so much a mission for pay, as a personal mission. Hinata had been on the receiving end of another beating from Neji. Her family, it seemed, were even less thrilled at the prospect of her dating an Inuzuka, than they were at her being friends with Naruto. Hiashi had told her, in no uncertain terms, that if she did not end this scandalous affair and start behaving as a proper heiress, that the Hyuga clan council would make her younger sister, Hanabi, heiress, and brand her with the caged bird seal that marked members of the branch house. She was staying at Naruto's cabin, and she wasn't alone. Shino was there, and so were Sakura, Tenten, and the Konohamaru Corps. Kiba had found Nara Shikamaru from Team 10, and was trying to get a plan out of the lazy genius, without giving his idea away. Currently, the two were stretched out on a rooftop overlooking the village. Hey, Shikamaru. What, Kiba, I've got a hypothetical situation, that I'd like you to have a think on. The Nara looked at him. Okay, shoot. Say I want to execute a mission. Very high risk, very hush-hush. Safe to assume it's an assassination, then. Replied Kiba. In truth, he had no intention of killing either of his targets. He just wanted to beat the shit out of them. But Shikamaru didn't need to know that. Target ID. 2 targets, both Hyuga. Neji and Hiashi. Shikamaru whistled, then muttered something about troublesome females. It can be done, but it's a suicide run without a pretty sizable army on your side, and even then you could expect massive casualties. Who would, hypothetically, be throwing his life away on this mission? Me. This is about Hinata, isn't it? Asked Shikamaru, as he looked Kiba in the eye. Kiba nodded. You're not actually going to kill Neji or Hiashi, are you? No. Just give them a hell of a beating. That, or die trying. With Hiashi, more likely the latter. But I've got a plan that might just lessen your odds of losing by a tiny margin. Who do you have who'll back you in this? Kiba quickly listed off the genin who were with Hinata, and Shikamaru listened attentively. Here's the plan, Kiba. That night, Kiba and Akamaru waited in the shadows outside the Hyuga clan compound's south wall, their ears attuned to the slightest sound, their noses to the faintest smell. Suddenly, from the ramparts above them, came a pair of muffled grunts. Shikamaru, and a hastily recruited Yamanaka Ino, had used their signature jutsus, the Kajimane and the Shintenshin, respectively, to take control of a pair of inattentive guards. Before their partners knew it, the two controlled guards had knocked them out, and Kiba ran up the wall and over. He landed silently and set Akamaru down. The puppy started sniffing, leading the way on a convoluted path toward the building that the raid plan had designated Objective Able, while avoiding the numerous traps sown throughout the grounds. The pair finally reached the objective, gave the signal for Objective Able reached, preparing to make entry, which was 2 clicks of the mic key on the radio Kiba carried, and moved to make entry. Objective Able was the branch house quarters just off the main building. It, like the main building, was built in the traditional manner, and consisted primarily of wood lath and rice paper sliding shoji panels. Kiba withdrew a razor blade from his belt and silently cut a rice paper panel out of an inconspicuous corner of the building. Akamaru stood at the hole as a lookout, while Kiba entered the building. He trusted his nose and Shikamaru's careful planning to know which room Neji was in. Kiba paused for a moment outside Neji's room and listened. Inside he heard the deep, even breathing of a man asleep. Kiba reached into his belt pouch and withdrew a cloth and a padded bottle of chloroform that he'd stolen from Hana's vet clinic earlier in the day. Kiba silently cut an entry hole into Neji's room, entered, and pressed the chloroform-soaked cloth to the Hyuga's face. When the startled boy's struggles ceased, Kiba bound and gagged him, and dragged him out into the courtyard. He moved Neji to a prearranged location by the compound wall and clicked his radio mic 3 times, the signal for Target 1 secure and ready for extraction. Kiba moved swiftly toward the southeast corner of the main building, the spot designated Rally Point, or RP-1. As he moved, he received 4 mic clicks in his earpiece, the signal for Extraction Team inbound to retrieve Target 1, Backup Team inbound to RP-1. Kiba and Akamaru stopped when they reached RP-1, and waited for their backup. They didn't have to wait long. Out of the blackness appeared Aburame Shino, Shikamaru, and Ino. Shikamaru spoke swiftly in sign language. The way out's open. Poison ivies en route to extract Target 1, and then afterwards we'll help Boomer and the 3 hyenas set up the fireworks show. Ready. Kiba's reply of a feral smile and a one-fingered salute was all the response Shikamaru needed. Kiba cut an entry through a low shoji panel with his razor, and the team moved in. Shino took point, his kikai swiftly draining the chakra from every Hyuga they came across, rendering them incapacitated. As each one collapsed, one of the youths would catch them and gently lower them to the floor. Finally, they came to the master bedroom. Kiba stood by to cut another entry hole, and the team made ready. They stacked on the door, and at Shikamaru's signal, Kiba slashed the shoji panel and moved inside, peeling right, while Ino moved left, Shikamaru moved right, and Shino peeled left. Hyuga Hiashi was taken off guard for a moment, startled awake, and it was that barest breadth of time that the entry team needed. Shino's kikai swarmed him at the same time Shikamaru's Kajimane no Jutsu froze him in place. As Hiashi felt his chakra start decreasing, a rag soaked in something was pressed to his face, and everything went black. Next came the second trickiest part of the operation. Having captured the Hyuga clan head, they now had to extract him from his own compound. And while the team may have had an exit corridor ready, and while they may have eliminated the guards inside the house, they still had to contend with the guards on the wall. Ino stood ready, while Kiba injected Hiashi with a drug to counteract the chloroform. They had to time this perfectly, or all their planning was for naught. Just as Hiyashi's eyes began to flutter, Ino performed her clan's signature Shintenshin no Jutsu, the mind transfer, and took over his body. Ino, in Hiyashi's body, picked up her real body, which had slumped over unconscious, and nodded to the others. They opened a window, climbed out, and Shikamaru clicked his radio mic once to check everyone's readiness. He was answered with one click from each. They were in position and ready. Kiba took a bearing on the dim red glow of a chemlight on the wall, where their exit lay, and let loose a hair-raising war whoop as he began to run. As he ran, the night sky over the Hyuga compound was lit up as bright as noonday. Sakura, callsign, Poison Ivy, was hurling flash bombs, smoke bombs, and kunai laden with explosive notes into the compound, aiming to cause random and wanton destruction and confusion. She was not alone in this task. Tenten, callsign, Boomer, was also throwing noisemakers and the odd chakra flare or two in among the confused defenders. Across the compound from the two ladies were Moegi, callsign, Shenzi, Konohamaru, callsign, Banzai, and Udon, callsign, Ed. Collectively referred to over the radio as the three hyenas, they'd been handed a backpack full of flares, smoke bombs, and itching powder bombs each, and told that when they heard Kiba whoop, they were to cause utter chaos. And cause chaos they did. They hit upon the idea of using the flares to blind the Hyuga, and then the smoke to cover the itching powder. Once each person had expended all their bombs, they fell back to the location designated in the raid plan as RP2. The snatch had gone without a hitch. Neji was awakened by a fist crashing into his jaw. He toppled backward, and tried to move, but found himself unable to move. His eyes were covered. Neji attempted to activate his Byakugan, but to his horror was unable to. His eyes had been disabled. Kiba growled into Neji's ear as he lay helpless on the floor. You brought this on yourself, Kerr. You harmed someone who had done you no harm. You raised your hand in anger to someone who had offered you nothing but kindness. It's been said that whatever a man does, for good or ill, comes back on him threefold. Brace yourself, Hyuga Neji. This is gonna hurt you way more than it does me. And with that, Kiba, Tenten, Sakura, Ino, and Shino fell upon the prostrate and helpless form of Hyuga Neji. After everything was over and the group had backed away, Neji felt himself hauled to his feet. He felt a senbon pulled from a pressure point at the back of his neck, and his vision slowly faded back in. All around him stood those who had beaten him, and before him, her lips still puffy and her right eye still blackened, stood Hinata. Hinata began to speak to Neji, and her voice didn't stutter at all. Neji-san, all my life, I looked up to you as if you were an older brother. I admired your skill and your courage. But now I realize that I was always weak in one respect. I let you trample all over me, and never put up a fight. I let the entire clan run me over, and never fought. I'm through with it, Neji, she said, her eyes beginning to tear. And to ensure that you realize just how serious I am, I'm going to do the one thing I hoped I'd never have to do. Neji, this hurts me as much as it does you. I'm sorry. Neji watched in horror as Hinata formed a one-handed seal and activated the caged bird seal on his forehead. Neji collapsed, his head feeling as if every one of his neurons were being melted. Neji screamed, and passed out from the excruciating pain. Hinata released the seal, and Sakura moved to the prone boy's side. She checked his pulse and reinserted the senbon that had rendered him helpless before looking up to where Kiba was comforting Hinata. They waited a few minutes so Hinata could compose herself, and then moved into the next room, where Hyuga Hiashi waited, drugged, bound, and with a chakra suppressant seal from Shikamaru's dad's gear plastered to his forehead. Kiba moved to Hiyashi's side and injected him with a counterdrug. When the Hyuga clan head's eyes opened, he was visibly enraged. What is the meaning of this? Daughter. Untie me this instant. I command you. His tirade was cut short by Kiba grabbing the back of the chair he was tied into and jerking it over backward. Kiba snarled, his face contorted with barely suppressed rage, as he spoke. Listen, Hiashi. Hinata loves me, and I love her. If you thought I'd just sit on the sidelines with my thumb up my ass while you tried to pull her strings like a puppet, or worse, while you allowed that cur, Neji, to beat her, then you're dumber than a brain-dead rabbit. I want so badly to beat the tar out of you like I did Neji, but out of my last little shred of respect for you as Hinata-chan's father, I won't. But listen and listen good, old man. Hinata has something to say to you. Kiba pulled the chair back upright and held Hiyashi's head still and focused on Hinata. Hinata's voice was steady, almost as devoid of emotion as her father's voice. She looked Hiyashi squarely in the eye as she began to speak. Hiyashi-sama, I thank you for the 12 years that you raised me. My time with the Hyuga has taught me many things of merit, whether they were deliberately taught, or not. One of the most important lessons that I've come to know, is the importance of following one's heart, although it may come at a great cost. Her eyes bored into her father's, and she continued. I come before you tonight to pay that great and terrible cost, and to follow my heart. I renounce my family name, and with it, my claim to the seat of Hyuga heiress. You threatened to brand me as a branch house member, Hyuga-san. I know the clan laws as well as any Hyuga, and the caged bird cannot be administered to a non-Hyuga. I am no longer a Hyuga. Know that I bear my former clan no ill will, and I will forever use my Byakugan only to defend this village. I shall expect my things to be delivered to the address on this paper within a week. Hinata nodded to Kiba, and the dog boy slid a folded notebook page into Hiyashi's left sleeve. Hinata began to speak again. I wish you well, Hyuga-san. Kiba-kun. Kiba plunged the needle into the Hyuga clan head's neck and depressed the plunger with his thumb. The ketamine in the syringe knocked Hiyashi out within seconds. The dose should wear off in a few hours. Until then, he's out for the count. Hiyashi awoke outside the north gate of the Hyuga clan compound, his head pounding. Beside him lay Neji. From the look of terror on his face, Hiyashi assumed that his caged bird seal had been activated. So, daughter, you do have a spine after all. Hiyashi removed the folded paper from his sleeve and read the address. The address listed was a storage unit on the outskirts of town, very near the base of the mountain. Hiyashi picked up his nephew, and went inside to break the news to the council.